OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
All right, Tuesday morning, you're very welcome along to OTB AM. It's Ger Gilroy. I'm here with you all the way through until 10 o'clock this morning, kind of. Shane's here too. Shane.
How are you? Good morning.
Com's also here.
Ger and Shane, good morning.
The England captain gets away with a lot of stuff, doesn't he?
Harry Kane is increasingly a disgrace.
Ooh. Now,
when it comes to that element of his game, he's
what are you going to do when he signs for Man United? You'll be like, yeah, the dark arts. He's got a winner's mentality. Him and Casemiro are exactly what this club needs.
I don't think any fan of any team, when there's a player in the team, like say Anthony for Manchester United goes down easily, you're just looking at him going, get up, come on.
So people waking up who went to bed early,
I wouldn't have seen it.
Who might not have seen this yet. Yeah. I'm sure you've all seen it. But anyway, if you haven't, what happened?
Big result for Everton, I would say. Last minute equaliser for Michael Keane. An absolute thunderbolt from the blue to rescue a point for Sean Dyche and co. Both teams down to 10 men. Lucas Moura sent off late for Spurs, but the incident that kind of got everyone talking was Abdoulaye Doucouré getting sent off for Everton. Harry Kane, I think it was the sending off was probably correct in that Doucouré kind of not scratched his face but had a claw out on Harry Kane's face. But to say he overdid it with the reaction would be putting it slightly mildly.
There's potential contact with the eye area.
Yeah, that probably.
If you come into work and stick your finger in my eye, I am rolling around the floor.
You're not.
I am rolling around the floor theatrically, going, "Oh no, it's the end of the world! Someone stuck their finger in my eye."
But what if there's like 70,000 or maybe 40,000 people watching you,
begging for my blood?
Maybe, yeah.
The reaction would depend on who's watching.
It would.
If it was just the two of you.
More people watching, more theatrics. I think, he definitely goes down far too easy. The fact that he's lying on the ground prone is, I think, Danny Murphy's called it embarrassing. He was doing the radio commentary. I don't know who was doing the TV commentary, the co-com. I didn't recognise the voice.
No, neither.
But they recognise immediately that Doucouré's in trouble, but also there's kind of a silence where it's like, not sure you're supposed to be going down like that. The reaction from Sean Dyche is priceless, and also Seamus Coleman making sure that everybody's aware that you can't be doing that. No.
Jimmy Carragher's reaction after the match was like, he summed it up. He was like, if my kid was playing a match and he go back into the car after the game, I'd say to him, what were you doing there? Like, if he did what Harry Kane did. And I think that sums it up. If we had kids at a match at under 10 level and they went down that easily because they watched Harry Kane maybe on TV and saw him do it.
Yeah, but like, if Harry Kane hadn't gone down and Doucouré hadn't been sent off and,
scores the penalty 10 minutes later. Miraculously, Harry Kane was okay. Can I just say, Harry Kane was fine. He didn't need hospital treatment. He got up and scored a penalty 10 minutes later. A beautiful penalty, I have to say, past Jordan Pickford. But it just leaves a bad taste. There's no point talking about diving in football for too long because it's not going to go away anytime soon, but it's a bit of and it's even sometimes the diving I understand almost in a weird way. It's when you get tapped and you overstate the physical contact that has been done on you.
It was a nasty enough game. In the first half, a ball gets chipped into the penalty area. Everton are attacking, and Coleman kind of goes down and has like screaming at the referee. And then about 2 minutes later, Coleman has one of those tackles where I can't actually remember who. Oh, Perisic. It's he catches Perisic on the front of the football boot around the metatarsal area, and it's a hard old tackle.
Yeah,
Perisic, but it's not even a booking. It could definitely have been a booking, and the commentators like, oh, it's definitely not. It doesn't rise to the level of a red card because it's not high enough. Hold my beer, says the Moura challenge in the second half. Is like, oh, that's what a red card challenge looks like.
That was a red card.
I really appreciate that the whole scenario. It was just such an accepted red card by everyone. It's nice to see, actually. He came in way too late. Straight away, the ref pulls out the red. Mora's devastated. Walks off. Done. Wouldn't you love to see more of that? I'm very grateful that the Doucouré Kane incident happened right next to the managers. That was fantastic theatre.
Adds to it.
Very grateful that it was right there. And then, as Ger already said, Sean Dyche and Seamus Coleman laying into Harry. Well done, Harry. Well done. Sean says. Harry Kane, by the way, doesn't flinch. does not flinch.
No.
And he's right beside him. The other thing as well, I was thinking...
So you desperately want him to sign for Manchester United to bring such shithousery to Old Trafford?
No, I get annoyed at the favourable treatment that Harry Kane gets in the British media. But it did lead me to think, what would we say if Seamus Coleman did the same thing? How would we react to it? How would we be talking about it today? Now, Shane, you'll say to me, Seamus Coleman would never, Colin, he would never do that. But if Harry Kane stays on his feet and reacts as you imagine he would have based on what Decore actually did, would Decore have been sent off?
Well, I think if Harry Kane reacts the way most people react, he's given Decore a dig and then he's getting sent off. Do you know what I mean? There's he is operating at a higher level than us mere mortals who, have not lived through this and don't really know what we would do when his job is to cheat because the cheating has been allowed. I think to Shane's point, there's no point in talking about diving in football anymore because the game is gone.
Yeah, we're way beyond that.
And so therefore the rules of engagement are if he doesn't go down, say Conte was still there, right, and he didn't go down, what is Conte saying to him afterwards?
Yeah, not street smart.
You should have got this guy sent off.
We're not wise.
We would have won that game.
We're too naive.
Qualification for the Champions League is worth between 40 to 60 million to this football club. What are you doing?
This was labelled at Mauricio Pochettino's Tottenham.
It was
too green.
It was the same amount of contact. It was years ago, Tiernan McCann went down under Darren Hughes' little tapped him in the head, and then he went down.
In fairness, Decore has his fingers in his face.
Yeah.
Honestly, if you are putting fingers in the face, you're getting sent off.
It was a total red card. But it got a bit existential. It was like when Macaulay Culkin wears the Macaulay Culkin t-shirt, right? Because the first reaction is Harry Kane goes down easy. And then everybody here in this country is like, Harry Kane is so ridiculous, and nobody will have a bad word to say about him in England. And even on commentary, which by the way was Andy Hinchcliffe, his co-commentator, they didn't really lay into Harry. It was kind of like, well, that's a red card all day. And then you're thinking, well, if it's the other way around, Decore would have got it. But then I'm thinking, well, we're all saying in this country, of course Kane gets favourable treatment. So now we're honing in on Kane.
Well, sorry. We all remember Alan Shearer literally kicked the head off Neil Lennon one time and nothing happened because he was the England captain. He was that was it. They're on the sideline. Lennon's face is there on the sideline, and next thing it's back into
they're
the
untouchable.
Left, back into the left.
Yeah.
There are certain super bonus points for being the England captain, and Harry Kane is aware of this, but so is everybody who plays against him. And the game stay the game. It is interesting that at least there are some people in the English football media saying this is unacceptable, but nothing's going to change. Is it? Is anything going to change? We've pissed off Bobby Dwyer straight off the bat here. Says the United fan, this happens to Bruno and he's in hospital. I mean,
yeah, and United fans would say if Bruno does this, and by the way, he has done this, gone down very easily. You're just get up. As a United fan, I would hate to see Bruno Fernandes do that. I think Spurs fans would hate to see Harry Kane go down the way he went down last night. It's just trying to get a player sent off. I understand that. There is clearly an advantage for Tottenham last night if Decore goes off, but you still have ethics, don't you, for yourself? Do you want to look back on your career and have been that player?
No, these are footballers who made it to the highest level, Shane. That's what.
True.
Part of the thing that separates them is their ability to practice repeatedly and do good quality practice. But then the other thing is this killer mentality, and that's what all of culture elevates above everything else: is kill or be killed. Right?
Nobody will blame Kane for going down within football. It's only us on the outside looking in. All his teammates say fair play for going down there, fair play for getting him sent off.
He looks like an idiot. He actually looks like an idiot.
No one's going to say that to him.
But then he got up and scored what should have been the winner. And everybody was oh, what a night Harry Kane had, managed to ignore the controversy, park it all, and still lead Spurs back into the Champions League. Now, they are back in the Champions League places, but it's looking a bit hairy for them at the moment.
Poor old Bobby Dwyer, he accounts for all but 3 of our live comments so far. I don't think he went to bed. Bob's telling me it's Don Goodman was on co-coms. Yeah, okay, it was one or the other. Google tells me it was Andy Hinchcliffe. But it ended up being a great game, and Michael Keane was central to everything. Gave away the penalty, was on the wrong end of the Lucas Moura challenge, and then that goal, that shot at the end.
Michael Keane was like Forrest Gump, and he has the photographs with all the presidents and the popes, and he's everywhere all at once, and he's been in every single world war.
There's also an amazing tackle in the first half that prevents a goal.
Yeah, he was all over the place. And the strike, you can kind of hear some Everton fans at the end is shoot. And he eventually...
He did, yeah.
He does shoot. And
pinged it straight in.
Ridiculous. You never see that, when you see the fans shoot or screaming for a shot, last minute. Players rarely do it, but he just let one go, let one rip. He fancied himself. And What a strike. I mean, that point could be, because that takes them up to 15th in the table for Everton at the moment. When you see what West Ham won at the weekend, Forest won as well. Like a lot of the teams, Drew picked up a point. Like, so a lot of the teams around them picked up points at the weekend. So it was kind of crucial that Everton, Sean Dyche got something on the board. So I think that point, who knows what it's going to mean at the end of the season, but it could be important.
That underdog couple that just keeps on giving. Tottenham Hotspur in 4th place, reunited again.
Back in.
They just can't keep their hands off each other. 2022-23, Spurs are 4th again after that 1 point display. But and then you had John Duggan, resident Tottenham fan, giving out on Twitter last night, what's this all about? Well, that's a point of Goodison.
Yeah.
That's one way of looking at it.
Okay, but they're not really 4th, are they? I mean...
Oh yeah, it says here.
Yeah, it does say that. But everybody has games in hand.
United have 2 games in hand over them, all right,
yeah.
They do, yeah. But would you rather your games in hand or your points?
No.
Huh?
The famous question. I also love how football fans never forget. Heung-min Son was getting tortured by the Everton fans last night for the tackle on Andre Gomez's ankle 4 years ago. I was like, why is he getting such a hard time? I looked it up on Twitter and I was like, alright, on Google. And it was like, yeah.
I was really looking forward to this game, Everton Tottenham at Goodison a few years ago. This was 6-2, I think, to Spurs. And Son wreaked havoc. I was really, really hoping for a high-scoring Monday night game. But Lucas Moura, that's probably arguably going to be one of his last contributions for Spurs. I could see him leaving this summer. The man who got them to the Champions League final with that winner against Ajax. And that's the way it ends, potentially, or one of his last games. He's really fallen off the radar. But like Spurs, I was looking at it last night, and when it was 1-1, and Everton were really pushing for that winner. I think if the game had gone on for another 5 minutes, Bobby Dwyer would be even more exercised in the comments. I was watching this thinking, if I was Harry Kane, I'd move this summer.
Yeah.
Because where is this going?
Well, who knows? To get a good manager in, get a world-class manager in who energises the place.
They've had world-class managers.
No, they didn't. They did in Conte, yeah, but Mourinho was not a world-class manager by the time he was there. Let's not get into this again because he was past it. He's been washed up. He was clearly washed up after his last stint at Chelsea. If Brighton win tonight, they'll go on to 46 points, which is 4 points behind Spurs in 4th. Are Brighton going to catch Spurs? Are Brighton going to finish above Spurs by the end of the season? So Brighton have 3 games in hand on Spurs and they're 7 points behind. So obviously they need to go on a great run of form to take them past Spurs. And they have a slightly better goal difference, which will obviously improve if they were to get up to that.
You have to laugh at Roberto De Zerbi getting linked with the Chelsea job now as well. It's like, come on. Do you think he's going to honestly do exactly what Graham Potter did and fall into that trap?
Fall into the trap of making 13 million in a payoff and but 7 million in the 7 months that you were there.
But you get a certain amount of money, those lads, and then you're like, well, I've made it now. I don't, my kids don't have to work necessarily.
Not sure that's how human greed works, Shane.
No, but it's also, yeah.
The lessons of human history would suggest otherwise.
They like being in football too, though. They want to be relevant and talked about. Once they see their names come out of the newspapers, they're like, well, I'd like to get back there.
Potter's going to be linked with every job now for the next period of time.
He's going to be the new Sam Allardyce for a while.
I mean, he should. If I was him, I would just move to Ibiza and have the crack.
With his £13 million, which is a report of what he's received.
Yeah. I don't know, does he get it all in one go or do they just keep paying him for a period of time? So
that'll be the case to Brendan Rodgers.
There was a suggestion that he'd already made 6 or 7 million in the period that he was there. I don't know, is that possible? And then you forget that they paid 22 million to sign him from Brighton.
Yeah.
That can't be right.
The most expensive manager in football history.
That can't be. This is like, oh my God.
10 million to get rid of Tuchel as well.
Imagine being an agent and Chelsea phone. You're like, yes, I will take your call.
Yeah.
Can I meet you now? I can meet you now.
Well, the guys on Sky last night were making the point that I'd say Graham Potter's probably relieved. Like when he first was told you are gone from the job, there was probably a sense of relief because that's batshit crazy. When you have 34 players, to deal with, egos, how do you pick a team there? I think he's probably sitting home now going, yeah, that was a bit mad. The sooner I get out of there, the better, probably, for my own reputation. Like right now, his reputation isn't great, but that's going to recover,
You know what this whole episode has really reminded everyone? That the Chelsea situation is so entertaining this season. Because I don't think we actually really honed in on it until Graham Potter lost his job. But if you look at it now, like it's all coming out now 24 hours later. First of all, shout out to Bruno Salter managing his first ever game of football tonight against Liverpool. And then next week against Real Madrid in the Champions League. Fantastic. Also the report in The Guardian this morning that Chelsea have so many first team players that they all can't get dressed at the same time in the same dressing room because there's no space. There's 34 of them in total. £600 million spent 7 months later, Potter's gone into a 5-year contract. Amazing. And now you have the reported wish list of the Chelsea bosses. Julian Nagelsmann, number 1. Maurizio Pochettino coming in second. Pochettino has to go back to Spurs, doesn't he?
No, he's not
Sporting
going back to
manager.
Spurs said no.
Ruben Amorim is third. Eintracht Frankfurt boss Oliver Glasner, the reigning Europa League champions, in fourth. And Luis Enrique, the 5th choice. Not a bad shortlist.
No.
Not a bad shortlist. The doubts with Nagelsmann, 35, possibly too young for this.
Right off the back of Bayern as well.
And he doesn't want to take the job until the summer.
Yeah.
I think Nagelsmann would be a very, very interesting appointment to Chelsea. I think the ego is strong enough for him.
He's also worked with
personality.
He's worked with the hierarchy in the
exactly.
past.
The Chelsea sporting director Lawrence Stewart and the technical director Christopher Vivel.
That's going to be important.
At RB Leipzig.
Here's what's going on between now and 10 o'clock this morning. It is 7:45. Got the power rankings at 8:05 with Tommy Rooney. David Brady's going to join us to look back on the league and what it means for Mayo. And sometimes Mayo have won league and been beaten by Roscommon the next week or the next game. Sports news with Carl at 8:50. Nedum Onuoha is going to join us at 8:55, and then Matt Williams is going to preview Leicester at the weekend. And we'll bring you some Pat Nevin thoughts at around about 9:30 this morning. Fact page headline on the Sun is the 42-year-old virgin, and that's to your point, column. Never picked a game in his life, never picked a team before for a match. Bruno Salter, who's you would say it's a baptism of fire, having to go up against Liverpool, and then also happened to go up against Real Madrid. Like, it's really, I don't know, do they understand? Rookie blues. Salter's in at the deep end. Is there any hope that he beats Real Madrid in a way that Potter couldn't have?
Well, he worked with Potter at Brighton, so he's learned off Potter, and maybe he's learned in what not to do.
Nagelsmann top of the list for Chelsea is the headline on the back of the Herald there for you. Kane storm, and it's a picture of, it's like, well,
looks bad in the still, doesn't it?
Yeah, he's got his fingers in his eyes. What are you doing? What's all this nonsense you're talking about? Why wouldn't he go down?
Well,
like he was shot.
No, it was definitely a red card, but I think the way he went down was exactly as you say, like he was shot, and he wasn't shot. Just a claw in the face.
Nagelsmann top 5 strong candidate list for Chelsea. They're saying they're going to go through proper due process, and the list of people that they have potentially. Wake up before we Diogo. Man United versus Brentford. This is a big game tonight for Man United. Now their home form has been excellent, so it's no big deal, right? Big news in the rugby world. Josh van der Fleer out of the game against Leicester on Friday night. We'll have tickets to give away for that later on in the week, by the way.
I'm looking forward to the Villa Leicester game, I have to say. I've got. This is the most Colin Boohig thing I'm ever going to say, right? But I'm going to say it. 3 players, and this is one for the viewers as well. Only 3 players have hit double figures for goals in each of the last 3 Premier League seasons.
Kane, Salah.
Correct.
Jamie Vardy.
No. The third one is why I'm asking this, because I was quite surprised.
Ollie Watkins.
And Nacho.
Ollie Watkins.
3. Right.
Kane, Salah and Ollie Watkins, double figures the last 3 seasons. That's pretty impressive by Ollie.
He scored in his last 6 away games, Watkins. Sure. Why won't you talk about Aston Villa?
Well, you don't want to tempt fate, a lifetime.
Unbelievable.
A lifetime of having your hopes dashed.
They've got the momentum now, Ger, after the weekend, for sure.
Tim Sherwood, Alex McLeish, David O'Leary,
Remy Gard,
Gerard Houllier. I had forgotten about Remy
Gard. Do you remember when Dwight York went on Sky Sports to complain about Remy Gard being appointed and that he should be appointed instead?
I don't know why I remember his name.
I mean, he might have been right in the end.
Great history at Villa.
In the end, he might have been right. I had actually blanked Remy. I had high hopes that we were going to somehow moneyball the French transfer market. At that stage, was Camoli not the director of football?
That Leicester Villa game in February doesn't seem long ago whatsoever. 4-2 Leicester, like a cracking game, and Rodgers is on a bit of a high.
One of those games where if Villa had won, we'd be like, oh, could they catch Spurs? But there was just a run there where things got away from them a little bit, and now they're back and they look good.
Well, what's the ceiling? What's the ceiling this season for them? Where can they finish?
Like 7th or 8th.
Yeah. Like, do you want Europa Conference League if you're an Aston Villa?
Well, I think if you have this manager, you want European football because he always wins the trophies that he's in, or reaches,
turns out
the
he
latter
loves the
stages.
Europa League. Yeah.
Like, and that's good. You've got to get a squad built for competing on 2 fronts, and
Is Unai Emery showing up as Steven Gerrard, or is it simply a case that Emery is one of the best coaches in Europe?
I think both. Like 100%, Gerrard was not the answer.
In other words, was Gerrard that bad?
Yeah.
Like,
Do you think?
Gerard was appointed.
Like, obviously, yeah.
He won the league with Rangers.
Yeah, I was going to say, anyway, like, I could probably win the league with Rangers.
He couldn't. They hadn't won the league in 10 years.
I know, but...
Well, maybe you could, Shane. I don't know.
Didn't they...
Waves, you know?
Didn't they get Celtic at a time when they were in transition, in between like having a...
They were going for 10 in a row.
Really good manager, and then having a really good manager, and then they had Neil Lennon back for a while. Is that what happened?
But if you're saying they're in transition and they were between good managers, but Shane just said anyone could win the Scottish Premiership.
Well, I think there's a significant difference between Ange and Celtic fans probably don't like Brendan Rodgers, but he was an excellent manager. And there's a step down to Neil Lennon, so it goes high, low, high, and in the middle of that, Stephen Gerrard comes in and wins the league. Yeah. But did Stephen Gerrard really win the league? Yeah. I know we had Tom English on. He's like, hang on a second now, you've got to give Stephen Gerrard some credit for that.
But Ange Postecoglou was a much better manager than Stephen Gerrard, and there's no arguing that, you know. So Gerrard certainly had a good coaching team around him, I think, which helped.
Yeah. I just feel there's a lack of love towards Aston Villa on the show. We've 2 people on Team Off the Ball to do this, and we don't hear much of them. You know?
Yeah.
You should be excited. This was and didn't John McKean also hit the crossbar along with scoring a screamer against Chelsea?
Good time to be a Villa fan, you know. They just want to play it down. Are Aston Villa fans like Kerry fans?
I think there's a slight difference there in that Kerry win All Ireland every 3 years.
It's true, yeah. The success maybe levels aren't there, but the fan
Aston Villa not winning a trophy every 3 years.
Playing it down, you know.
They won in Europe in the 80s.
I mean, look, it's been a while, yeah.
Yeah. I think you should be proud of your boys.
I had an opinion on fans as well that I wanted to share. I was at Croke Park at the weekend, and I had an interesting experience. Myself and one of the lads from Roscommon, Outingham here, but sure. Look, we had some, shall we say, rowdy Mayo fans around us who, every time Shane Walsh got near the ball, it was like, Dublin footballer, he's Dublin footballer, he's Dublin footballer. But I mean to the extent that, like, they didn't stop saying it. And then some unsavoury words towards some of the Galway players when they would miss shots, and every point and every moment, especially, I think Comer had the shot that was eventually put wide by the Hawkeye, and the Mayo fans were up, you know, in the face of the Galway lads. And the Galway people around me, I have to say, they behaved impeccably. Like, I don't know if I could have bit my tongue, but they sat there in quiet solitude. So I'm not saying Mayo fans are any worse than any other fans in the country, because every single county in Ireland has annoying fans, including my own. But I'm interested in people's opinions as to who you think the most annoying, let's say, GAA fans are in the country. Because it's only when you're out and about at matches that you witness some of this behaviour and you're like, Jesus, that's annoying. You know, I don't know how people bite their tongue.
I find the Waterford hurling matches quite objective.
Objective?
Not too bad. Not too polarising or too... I think they understand a good game of hurling.
Okay,
but I would also
come on, you're being soft here. You're naming the good fans.
I would also say this to you, Shane.
Why are you bringing Waterford up?
Every set of fans ever, in any sport, they're all awful. Because they're all massively biased towards their own team. So they can't be objective.
Isn't there something worse about the GAA fans who are actually going to see the people that they're abusing in person, like, really soon? They have a recognisable voice, and they're giving their own clubmen, in some instances, abuse. I find that a little bit like, what? He knows, he can hear you, you know, like you're saying really bad things about this person who you've watched grow from, like, you know, underage now to blossoming to the point where he's dedicating his entire life to do this, and you're
no
like,
money, essentially. Yeah.
Why did you bring up Waterford when he brings up Mayo? Is that like you know, because if you were trying to sell us something, we'd be like, oh, he's selling us Waterford here.
Yeah. Well, I would say the same. I said,
do you need to be careful here? I think everybody just needs to know. Colin, obviously, he is a Cork man. You can tell from his accent, but he's married into Waterfordness. And now Shane asked the question, who are the most annoying GAA fans in the country? And Colin immediately starts to go,
so who's the least annoying?
Least annoying.
Well, but did you mean the least annoying?
Yes.
Did you?
Yeah.
You said objective or objectionable.
Is there anyone, like, who's the worst? Or what was the question, actually? What was your question?
You're never getting to the in-laws again.
In people's experiences, who have they found? Because I would say the Dublin GAA fans at away league matches that I have met have been very knowledgeable and quite nice.
Yes.
Do you know?
That's what I meant.
So that, yeah, but I was talking about the other side.
Well, I didn't go there. Like, that's what I do. You know, I try to get the positivity and everything.
Well, I was
like, well, who are nice fans?
Well, you're a Cork fan, so like, undoubtedly you'd have come across Kerry fans in their pomp.
Yeah. Yeah, like I find it fascinating. I was at the All-Ireland final last year, football, and I do find it fascinating what happens to human beings when the whistle goes.
Well, see,
it's just the worst in people in that instance 70 plus minutes. It's just like all impartiality's gone, all graces, all manners just gone. You're just watching these people turn animalistic.
I love when a team wins. If you can win and lose with honour. I was at the Monaghan Dublin match last year in the league, where Monaghan obviously get the last minute point to relegate Dublin and stay up themselves. And the Dublin fans around us, literally to a man, were shaking hands with Monaghan fans. Well done, well done. I didn't see that between the Mayo and Galway fans the weekend. That's Chris has commented, top 5 most annoying fans in order: 5th Dublin, 4th Mayo, 3rd Dublin, 2nd Armagh, and 1st Mayo. So Mayo have appeared in his top 5 twice, and Dublin also twice, and Armagh have made
it. Yeah, I can vouch for that, Chris. I was at Cork, Dublin, Croke Park in football 2019. Dublin hammered Cork. Cork actually hung in there till about early the first half an hour anyway. It was the most patronising last 5 minutes of the game I've ever been to. Like, you're not bad, lads. You're not bad. Keep it up. You're not bad.
It's the patronising is the word, I think, for some fans. This is obviously a minority in any county, 100%. But there's a trend there, and there should be a scientific study done into it, I think.
I know. Let's generalise wildly.
Kilkenny are arrogant. Oof.
But you see, I guess that is again a psychological thing. Kilkenny are so used to winning, and Kerry are so used to winning that of course their fans are going to be a little bit arrogant. That's just, it's nature and nurture. They have to be arrogant because they're so successful.
Yeah.
I mean, if Monaghan had that many All-Irelands, I'd probably be a little bit arrogant going to matches myself. But they don't, so I'm not.
Kieran O'Leary, as a Cork man, I find Cork fans a bit annoying, to be fair. P174, Clare fans. Can people explain why? Don't just name the fans, explain to it. Don't get us in trouble now, but like a reason for this, like, because we're just naming counties out there 9. But what, like, give us examples. I'd like to read those. That'd be good.
Yeah. It's just a phenomenon I notice at matches. Like, it's Mayo and Roscommon are going head to head this weekend, and I'm pretty sure those two sets of fans don't like each other. And I'm speaking in generalities again here. But there's two counties that...
Well, they obviously, there's a town that straddles the border. I think parts of the Mayo Roscommon, it's much more keenly felt than others, right?
Ger showing his experience, say nothing and keep saying it. David, I'm interested from a Kildare perspective.
Well, it's difficult because, a lot of times no one cares about you. It's like you, I guess, Shane, a little bit, except you've obviously had some success. So, I presume the Tyrone fans hate the Monaghan fans, and I presume the Monaghan fans hate the Tyrone fans and the Armagh fans.
Yeah.
Everybody has their issues with Tyrone for whatever reason. I don't know.
Tyrone's an island, well, they call it the island sometimes, that there is that siege mentality. But again, not putting them down. Maybe that's why they're so good and have been so good. 4 All-Irelands tells a tale. So there's something in it. And look, there are lovely fans from every single county. But I'm just wondering what the higher...
They all have lovely bottoms, Shane. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, but...
a little bit of Father Ted there.
But I think there are percentages in terms of the annoying fans.
And you're saying Mayo are at the top?
Well...
That's your experience in the weekend?
Certainly at the weekend, of the 4 counties that were present, Dublin, Derry, Mayo and Galway. Mayo were the most vocal.
In much the same way that in The Sopranos, hell was every day is St. Paddy's Day, and you're stuck in an Irish bar. That's where Christopher Moltisanti, when he gets shot. For you, hell would be being stuck in Croker as Mayo win the All-Ireland and end their famine. Every day, waking up and going and being surrounded by the Mayo people. That's your definition of hell.
Because that'd be a beautiful moment for Mayo fans.
Yeah, but you're stuck there every day, Groundhog Day.
Maybe just once will be fine. But seeing it on repeat. And I've nothing against Mayo whatsoever. In fact, the Mayo...
Is that not how this started? You're harbouring a grudge from the weekend for your treatment at the hands of the rough-hewn Mayo folk.
I was watching the reaction of my Roscommon mate who was really taking it to heart. But he was fine at the end of the day. The guy started tapping me in the back. Mayo scored a point at one stage, and he started tapping me in the back. Oh, up Mayo! And I just turned around and said, I'm from Monaghan, man. And then he's like, oh Jesus, he beat us last week. I've nothing against Monaghan, men. So it was all friendly from that point on. But I mean, it was just...
You were cheering Galway though. Well, they were rubbing it in.
For people who aren't aware, I am 50% Galway. My father and my grandparents and cousins galore are Galway. Dunmore, to be particular. So
now people are getting it. ML89. Clare are like Newcastle fans, a group of people who think it's a big team that wins feck all and are very loud for no reason. And I'm 50% Clare, so I should get offended by that.
Right, okay, yeah.
Naturally, any set of fans when teams are doing well are going to be painful. Cork logic there by Kieran O'Leary, I'd agree. One lad with a microphone talking about Monaghan makes more noise than most Mayo fans.
Well, maybe, but like Nathan Murphy does enough talking for Mayo fans as well with the microphone.
Nathan's gone. P-Well74, Clare fans bitter and think they invented hurling in 1995. That was the reasoning. Thank you. That's what I need to know, like, rather than just naming them. Tell us why.
Right. Keep this coming. Yeah, you can get in touch with us. 087 9180 180 is the WhatsApp number, or you can leave a comment in the YouTube stream. Did you have one last one there, Colin, that you wanted to get to?
In general?
Well, you were giving out, what was the grumbling off stage?
Someone has said Mayo or Spurs as well, which is...
No, I was just laughing at you moving on from this segment. But I did want to say about Brendan Rodgers, I feel very bad for him because the spotlight's gone completely off him because of Graham Potter getting sacked in the same day. And now no one's talking about Rodgers.
And he'll hate that.
And he will hate that.
Yeah.
I just wanted to get that in there.
He's the best candidate for some of those jobs, though.
He really is. He really, really is. Like, I'd be taking Brendan Rodgers if I was the vast majority of clubs in the Premier League. And he's such a good manager. The thing is, he runs out of steam. And also his teams can't...
When does he run out of steam, though?
Towards the end of his 10 years.
How long is his tenure?
Exactly. I'm on your side here. But I'm just saying there's one caveat to him. Also, his teams can't defend set pieces. Can't.
I mean, look, I think the situation at Liverpool is very different, where they had the league in their hands and then they broke. We've seen the current Liverpool team with their world-class manager be a little bit broken by what happened to them last season, where they got so close but fell. So that you can see that there's a hangover. The situation at Leicester is completely different. They stopped spending money. They spent and they backed him, and he took a club to the brink of Champions League on 2 separate occasions and won a trophy for a club that has been trophyless. And that there's no way that you can say that he's run out of steam here without caveating that significantly to the fact that their money dried up for loads of different reasons. So anyway, 8:02. We've got to go. OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition is available now. After the break, Tommy Rooney of the Football Pod.
OTB AM.
The Sports Breakfast Show from Off the Ball. The Football Pod.
Even if that's not the case, just the fact that they believe that he's the best coach 100%, is unbelievably powerful. Then if the fact that he is as well is the cherry on top. But once you get that buy-in, no matter what he says in training, we are doing that to the best of our ability, and whatever he says, we're taking it onto the field. Like, that's the buy-in that sometimes coaches, if there's any bit of doubt, they don't get that.
Subscribe to the Football Pod wherever you get your podcasts. OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
Some of these critics, these pundits.
Generally speaking, I'd be a fan of Off the Ball. Exactly, and like Tommy knows his football, obviously I listen to Football Pod the odd time. And
when I was looking at the power rankings, and I thought that Jesus Owen must still be feeling the effects of these mushrooms.
But they just dismiss you like you have nothing to do with the bloody occasion.
Tommy Rooney.
Morning, Ger. How are you? How's Shane?
Morning, Tommy.
I'm very well. Is that a Meath Hill top or is that a Cratloe top?
It's a Meath Hill top, yeah.
Ah, very good, yeah. Paying due deference to where you come from.
True, yeah. I've plenty of Cratloe gear, but they're the same colours, so very handy.
Is that why you picked them?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Very good. Okay, let's get into this because there's lots to get to. This is the end of the beginning, not the beginning of the end.
Yeah, it's I'm not gonna say it's a correction. It's a confirming of the facts of what we know before we get into Championship. There will be obviously lots of changing this year in Championship because we're going to get a lot of football matches. We're going to get a lot of games. There's going to be a round robin series in about 5 weeks' time. So we can do the power rankings as many times as we want this year, lads.
People aren't ready for the round robin, and I think people aren't ready for a good team dropping into the Tailteann Cup and then not caring enough about it and missing the opportunity to do stuff. I think all sorts of storylines are going to emerge. So
I agree.
That Derry under-20s story is rumbling on as well. Apparently there was a change in the wording of the motion proposed, which would have got Derry out the gap, but then when it actually got written into law, now they're not going to be out the gap. So we can talk about that a little bit later on. But let's get into it, right?
Yeah, let's get into it. Slide 4. London haven't moved, so they're still 32nd. A few changes here. Tipperary have slid back to 28. Longford are in 27th. They got a win. So this is taking into account the last round of games, where there was obviously a little bit of shadow boxing, and the league finals. Laois back to 26th, failed to get promotion. Leitrim 25th.
Right, okay, sorry, we have no graphics today, I'm spotting that. 32 London, 31 Waterford, 30 Carlow, 29 Wexford, 28 Tipperary, -1, 27 Longford, +1, 26 Laois, down 1, and Leitrim also down 1.
Okay, so I can run through them and let you know then the kind of the movements. 24th position, Wicklow are up 2. Guaranteed promotion in that last kind of swing on the final day. And we're unlucky against Sligo in the Division 4 final. Sligo 23rd, they haven't really moved since the start. We kind of expected them to get promoted. Antrim 22nd, Limerick 21st, Offaly are down 1 to 20th, Down are up 1 to 19th as they eye up Donegal in 10 days' time. Fermanagh in 18th, guaranteed promotion. Westmeath, this will please a lot of people who've been giving me grief for having Westmeath so high, have slipped back to 17th ahead of the start of the championship. I do think that they will be higher come the end of it. I don't think we saw the real Westmeath during the league. Meath back to 16th, where they belong. Jerry, you mentioned a big team going into the Tailteann Cup. I have a feeling Meath are going to end up in the Tailteann Cup this year. And it may end up being the best thing for this Meath side. Very, very young team, inexperienced. When I say maybe the best thing, I hope they treat it like they would do an All-Ireland series and just get that game plan right.
Will they though, Tommy? You know, will the players not head off?
Much. Say it again, Sean?
Will players not head off if the likes of Meath are in the Tailteann Cup?
I think that's kind of the round robin's going to be in May,
it's
right?
Too early,
so you're going to get your 3 games in May anyway, and then you're into a quarter final. And I don't think you can play in the States anyway. I might be wrong on this. I don't think you can play in the States until your county's out of the All Ireland, out of the series, out of the Tailteann Cup. So
right,
they're going to have to wait anyway till Meath are out. So obviously players will go anyways. That you'd never stop a player going. I don't think you should at the club or county level. Go and enjoy America, but I do think there are rulings in place that they certainly at the All Ireland series they have to be out. So I think it's the same at the Tailteann Cup. If they go, they go.
Right, Tommy. This is the moment where the This Is Your Life music plays, and Eamon Andrews pops out with a big red book. This is going over most people's head. Happy birthday, Tommy!
Happy birthday, Tommy!
Thanks, lads.
We're stopping for a moment to acknowledge. Tommy, you better be prepared to be blushing, buddy. Wrote it there, Roisin. Who are we going with first? We're going with Trevor Giles.
Oh, hello, Tommy. How are you? Trevor Giles here. Big birthday congratulations to you from one good Meath man to another. I hear you're hitting a good milestone today, so well done to you. Hope you have a great day, Tommy. Enjoy it. We'll have Sam Maguire back on the banks of the River Boyne before you hit your next big milestone. So we'll keep the faith. Colin will have the lads flying before come the championship, and loads of good young underage Meath footballers coming through the ranks. So good times are on their way. So, but listen, enjoy today, Tommy. Have a great one, and we'll talk to you soon.
Trevor Giles has the good genes. He looks like he could still play.
Looks the same as he always did.
He does. That is amazing.
That's class, lads.
Oh, we're not finished, Tommy. It's only getting going. Next, the man, the myth, the legend.
Hi, Tommy. Sean Boyle here. I believe there's you're hitting the 3rd decade. Great time just to start your life. And if whatever you could do really would be try and keep the rest of the lads doing a little bit of work in there, because they're codging off you all the time. Listen, have a great day, Tommy. We talk soon. Up the Royal.
That's obviously Paddy and James he's talking about. One last one for where did you have them in the power rankings? Number 16, down 2, and this is how you get repaid.
Hi Tommy, Colin O'Rourke here. I'd just like to wish you a happy birthday. It's hard to credit that you've survived 30 years of the wild west of North Meath and have come away from it unscathed. But they're a tough lot down there. We could do with a few of them on the Meath team at the moment. Things not going so well, but they're going to get better. We have lots of good young players coming through, and it's just a matter of people keeping the faith. We will get there. Anyway, Tommy, happy birthday. Keep up the good work.
That's class.
That sounded a bit like a come and get me plea from the Meath manager there. If you were to redeclare your interest / intention. You know, they could do with a bit of experience up on that full forward line.
That's class, lads. Thanks very much. I definitely milked this birthday. So really appreciate it. That's brilliant. Thankfully, nobody told Gilesy about the argument we had on Mount Rushmore a couple of summers ago.
Oh, he was left off, was he, Tommy?
Yeah, I think Gilesy just about didn't make the cut. Didn't go down very well. That's class.
We can draw a discreet veil over that. We might come back to that in a few minutes' time. Let's.
Thanks very much.
So 16, Meath down to.
And by the way, the Meath under-20s are in action tonight. And I'm telling you, lads, there's a good group of players there. As Sean Boylan, Colin O'Rourke and Trevor Giles said, the good times are coming. But they are where they are at the minute. 16th. Cavan are up to 15th. They won the league final at the weekend, Division 3. They'll be quietly confident of facing whether it's Antrim or Armagh in the Ulster quarter final. Cavan will be happy at where they're at so far this year.
So for Cavan to get into Sam Maguire, they need to beat Antrim or Armagh. Let's assume that for argument's sake that it's Armagh who'd be favourites to win that. Armagh would still be favourites against Cavan, but it's not beyond the bounds of possibility that Cavan could turn them over, and then they've got to win one more game after that.
Down or Donegal.
Right. Again, eminently doable given the way the circumstances have fallen. But if Armagh were to just handle their business and come through that side of the draw, you wouldn't be terribly surprised. At which point, Cavan, you'd have to say, would be right there amongst the favourites for the Tailteann Cup, irrespective of who else is in it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yeah. And they got the job done at the weekend. There was probably times in that Fermanagh game where you were thinking Cavan were doing what they had done last year in the Tailteann Cup and we're going to let a trophy slip away. Cavan, by rights, probably should have won the Tailteann Cup last year if you were looking at it on paper in advance. You know, it was a very good Westmeath team, but people would have fancied Cavan going into it and they let it go down the stretch. Let's not forget Cavan won Ulster 2 years ago. So, 3 years ago.
Yeah, COVID shortened, obviously. So, Cavan are 15th. Kildare up 2. Back-to-back wins at the end of the season. Everything's coming up.
They're back, baby.
Everything's coming up really white.
Look it, and, you know, Glenn Ryan and his charges steadied the ship somewhat. There is a good bit of movement in this kind of middle tier, lads, because you got to move teams somewhere. Like, you got to, there's Kildare possibly higher than they should be, but, like, who else are you supposed to put there? Like, they are where they are. They survived. They finished 5th.
Well, they're scraping into Sam Maguire by the skin of their teeth.
Because they're not going to win their Leinster semi-final against the Dubs, but they will enter a round-robin series and maybe they can get a bit of a kick then. They're going to get 3 games and who knows. There's only 4 counties who are going to be knocked out of the All-Ireland at the end of the round-robin series. There's a preliminary quarter-final there where second position meet third position, and that's before we get to an All-Ireland, and that's possibly why we've got no break between the provincials and the league.
We do love an old sexy marketing nomenclature.
It's a lot of games just to get rid of a handful of teams, isn't it?
Preliminary quarter-final. So sexy. Feel the preliminaries here.
Oh, yeah.
Why can't they just call it Wildcard Weekend and get on with it? Like, it's going to be wild. There's going to be some team who comes from this who are going to catapult forward on the back of a victory. No, these are preliminaries. Don't pay any attention to it. You can ignore it. Draw a discreet veil over it. Watch the hurling that weekend. It's probably going to be better. That's the message I'm taking from preliminary quarter-final weekend.
I know. We need a little bit of work on it. We need to Todd Bowley it up.
Tommy, I have a quick question for you. So you the likes of Cavan there up to 15th. I agree with you. I think they are deserving of their place up to 15th. Do you feel a pressure based on how vocal a county's support might be on social media? Because the likes of Cavan and
I'll be honest, our conversation a couple of weeks ago where I made the point that a Cavan man couldn't bribe me and you said, well, they wouldn't anyway. That's been brought up to me a lot more about any other moment in the power ranking this week. I wouldn't say I've gone soft. I would just say that, you know, I needed to make a couple of corrections here and Cavan probably deserve it. Like, they've won all of their games by the Antrim one. So
I think I'd probably still have Kildare. It's a Kildare are ahead of Cavan. 15 Cavan, 14 Kildare, 13 Clare, 12 Louth, 11 Cork, 10 Donegal, 9 Monaghan. No changes there. That's a real. I've done my work here. I couldn't be.
But like, who goes there? Like, you know, and
Donegal and free fall
could be higher. They could possibly be higher, but they're not guaranteed to play in Sam. So what's the point in having them up there?
I know you're doing. I know it's recency bias, but there's only 2 teams have been in the top 6 in the country in the league in the last 10 years, and consistently for the last 10 years. They are Kerry and Monaghan. So Monaghan have been in Division 1 for 10 years next year. That means they've been in the top 6 in the country in the league.
Yeah, but this is the power ranking, Shane.
Yeah, they've just beaten Mayo, the only team to beat them.
Jesus,
Kevin McStay's only defeat as Mayo manager.
Mayo's B team, yeah.
Yeah, listen.
That game
in Castlebar, still a strong
Get off
Mayo
the roundabout,
team.
Shane. Get off the roundabout. How many times have you gone around it at this stage? We know Monaghan survived. Fair play. Brilliant. They showed serious resilience. But, let's face it, it's still a young group in Monaghan. They probably aren't the Monaghan that we've seen that, peaked in the last decade, won a couple of Ulsters, got to an All-Ireland semi-final, didn't they?
Yeah,
or did
they? They did 2018.
They got to an All-Ireland semi-final. They're very unlucky a couple of years.
You're sleeping on
Monaghan
them.
aren't there yet. I'm not saying they won't get back there, but they're not there yet.
I'm quite happy for you to sleep on them. That's fine.
I don't think we are.
By the way, the Monaghan 20s have, in the preliminary round a couple of weeks ago, beat Cavan. Beat Armagh by 2 points. Last weekend, they beat Cavan, a good Cavan under 20 team.
All right.
And they have Down coming up in the semi-finals. They're a good team.
Okay, you're no, this is not local radio, Shane. That segment is over. We're not talking about Monaghan anymore. So let's do a bit more roll with their Roisin. So some of Tommy's colleagues, here's what they have to say. We're going to start with the football pod guys.
Tommy, 30 years of age, happy birthday. It's all downhill from here, I have to say. I was texted over the weekend. You had a great run in your 20s, but with my own 30th birthday, I never started another match for Dublin. Literally, the day I turned 30, I was dropped by Jim Gavin. So, you shouldn't have any issues like that. You're young, you're fit, you look great. Have a great week celebrating this, because you really should make the most of it. Hope Schiefer's looking after you, and Bailey, and enjoy the big trio. What could possibly go wrong?
Ruthless from Jim Gavin. What did James O'Donoghue have to say?
All right, Tom. Just want to wish you a very happy birthday from the kingdom. The baby of the football pod, finally becoming a man. It's funny actually, because a lot of people ask me, what age is Tommy Rooney? And I say 29. And they go, geez, I would have sworn late 40s. So you're getting there. But no, on a serious note, hope you had a great birthday, and maybe this year you get that call you want off Colm O'Rourke. Happy birthday, Tom.
It's really Colm Collins you want the call from. But anyway, there's one final one that we're going to do for now. This is the most devastating one that we've ever had.
Tommy Rooney, how's it going? A very happy birthday to you. The big 3-0, which I'm sure you pointed out to Colm O'Rourke in multiple unanswered WhatsApp messages, means that your best years are still very much ahead of you at this point. Really miss the chats, really miss catching up with you, Tommy. Really enjoyed that last conversation we had last summer, for example, where you told me in no uncertain terms that my life would be in danger unless I quit my job and left the country immediately, so that you could pick up the mantle as being the custodian of the power rankings. Really missed the letters you used to send to my family home, warning us that we were in grave danger unless we all fled the country with immediate effect in order for you to take up the role of power rankings chief executive. So looking forward to catching up again soon, Tommy. Looking forward to seeing you. And just one other thing, quick word of warning, watching the Instagram very, very closely, a couple of worrying developments. It seems that with the great responsibility of the power rankings has come a great sense of inflated ego, and we're seeing more of you on the Instagram, we're seeing more of the power rankings on your Instagram, and we are unfortunately seeing less of your incredibly cute dog Bailey, which culminated in a series of pretty grim allegations over the course of the weekend, and some photographic evidence that suggests that you actually turned your dog into a birthday cake, which is quite troubling news indeed. And I don't want to ruin your birthday or anything, but I would suggest that you come out and clear up these allegations with immediate effect. Otherwise, your 30th will be ruined, to be quite honest with you. So hope we can get that cleared up, Tommy. Have a good one.
Sigmund Freud, that was a lovely one. By the way, the sunglasses are brilliant. Sigmund Freud,
I saw the sunglasses there in the corner of my eye. He's looking well. I can clear up those allegations. I was equally horrified as I was amazed by the birthday cake that was presented to me at home in Meath. So it was my mum and sister who came up with that idea, and I couldn't eat it until I had about 8 pints into me. It was nice, but when Mum said, "Do you want to bring it home with you?" I couldn't bring it home. So
it looked exactly like your dog. To be
fair. Wasn't actually Bailey though, just for the record.
No, it wasn't actually based on Bailey. It wasn't actually based on Bailey. I saw the photo they used, and Bailey's asleep, so I'm not going to wake him up.
Okay, last one for now. Who's this?
Good morning. I just wanted to wish Meath Hill's finest, Tomas Rooney, a very special and a happy 30th birthday. I hope all's good, my man. Enjoy it all. You're cracking on a bit now, Tommy. Now residing, of course, in the west of Ireland, where, if anything, that will truly make a man of you. Enjoy it all. It doesn't seem 2 minutes ago since I joined off the ball and you were my wingman. But anyway, take it easy. All the best.
That looked like he's wearing silk pyjamas.
Life's good. And
you got Kevin up Brady for that one.
Right, let's keep going. Happy birthday,
Thanks,
Tom.
lads. You're very good. I just little note here. You know, you aren't giving me that much grief, but Clare 13th, Cork are 11th. Clare 3-1 at the weekend, and I had called down very early on in the football pod this year, and I got berated by James and Paddy for it. They're now 7-4 heading into the Donegal game this weekend. You know, there's a couple of very, very tight matches. There's 9 matches in Championship this weekend. There is a danger that the likes of Leitrim and Sligo could get caught away from home. They're going into the Bear Pits in London and Royceupin and Gaelic Park in New York. There's always kind of, eyes on New York early days to see who they have, like what's going on. And they've got a pretty solid team out there, a couple of strong Galway players and a couple of late additions as well. So there's going to be some very tasty games this weekend. Keep an eye on the 9 of them.
Okay, so plenty
into slide 1.
Yeah.
So a couple of changes here. Roscommon are 8th, Armagh 7th, Tyrone have moved up 1 to 6, so they've swapped with Armagh there. Roscommon possibly hard done by. Derry Dublin, I made this change last night, lads, after midnight, so I don't know if I was right to do it, but I've gone with my gut. I've gone with what I've watched and what I've seen, and I've put Mayo into 2nd place and I've swapped them with Galway there. A lovely little bit of needle during the game, after the game, and if we get, and Roscommon, I hope they rattle the cages and I hope they turn up the bucks this weekend, but if we get Mayo Galway in 2 weeks, that is going to be a cracker.
So number 1 is Kerry, number 2 is Mayo, number 3 is Galway, number 4 is Dublin, number 5 is Derry, number 6 is Tyrone.
Mm-hmm.
Armagh 7 and Roscommon 8. I have to say, I think that we might have seen Derry's ceiling, and I'm basing this off the fact that so much has been made of the tiny little squad they have. Like, we'll talk about this a little bit later with David Brady, but the squad is so small that this under-20s thing is actually going to have a negative impact on them. And how do you go from having a really good defensive structure to having no defensive structure against the Dubs?
There's a couple of things there. James and Paddy are adamant that Gallagher is going to play the 20s that he needs, and they're not going to play 20s championship. He's adamant that that's going to happen. They think it needs to be a horse for course approach, depending on the county and the alignment between the board and the team and the manager. We obviously saw a blowout in Meath a couple of years ago with Bernard Flynn and Andy McEntee. Now in Meath at the minute, there's an agreement in place between Conor O'Rourke and John McCarthy that O'Rourke won't go near the 20s, even though there's a good clatter of footballers there that he'd probably love to have involved. They're going to stay going. There's a good team there. They're convinced that Derry are going to effectively take the lads away from their 20s team and put the priority in the senior championship, because that's a tricky game against Fermanagh they got coming up after that. Have we seen their ceiling? I wondered last year, have we seen their ceiling when they got to the All-Ireland semi-final and they fell short against Galway. I wasn't sure that they had added enough this year. Like, in fairness to them, they've added a few bits and pieces. McAvoy going full back, who was missing at the weekend, has freed up Rodgers to play the way he's playing in midfield. Christy McCaig wasn't there at the weekend. The wheels kind of come off when Glass went off. It is a thin team. It is a thin panel. And they didn't even have Lachlan Murray and a couple of players come off the bench late on, which made the difference in other games. I do think that there are limitations with this Derry side. But I'll say it again. I've said it a couple of times this year. There are limitations with every single one of the contenders this year.
Okay.
Positives and negatives with all of them. Derry's have probably been exposed and are more obvious.
I think Tyrone are ahead of Derry, actually, given the fact that they, as a squad, know what it takes to win an All-Ireland. And granted, they did it under fairly remarkable circumstances, with the game being postponed and then being back on, and then just the performance in the semi-final and final. Like that's the type of thing that stands you. Go on.
Don't forget, though, think of the savage depth Tyrone had back then. And it all fell apart after that. Even their X factor coming off the bench, Conor McKenna, like, he was a huge addition back then. They weren't even starting. Were they starting McShane and Canavan that year? Did McShane end up getting a starting berth?
No, he comes off the bench too.
Yeah,
they had an incredible bench, but Canavan has stepped up, and that under-20s team from last year was fairly impressive, and they're starting to be an influx of new blood at training, and there's just enough nous. I do think that they turned things around in the league, and I did think that when they were All-Ireland champions, that there was a significant cohort of that team that's very, very good, and they're still there. So I would actually have them ahead of Derry at the moment.
Where are you on Galway Mayo?
Well, I think Galway are third and Mayo are fourth, right? Just on the basis of Galway have strength and depth. Their best players aren't playing at the very limit just yet, and that Mayo have come out and have gone for this early to try and get that confidence going, to get that rolling ball going, because it's so difficult sometimes to stop. But I just think that Galway, the whole thing about losing the finals, Liverpool lost about 4 finals in a row under Klopp before they eventually exploded, and I just feel like Galway have not been trying to win the league, but right? And they've managed to build significant depth.
The nature of the power rankings is reactive, so you can't have the league champions in fourth.
I can do what I want.
You can have your own little.
So the nature of the power rankings
you've got
is
Dublin in second.
What?
You've got Dublin in second.
No, I don't.
Who do you have second?
Kerry are second.
What?
Dublin are first.
I think we've seen a transformation in Dublin. I think we've seen, if you look at the team, right? If you look at the team at the end of the league, Con is fit, James McCarthy is fit, Mannion is fit. Now, I don't know what's going on with McCaffrey. I would like to have seen more of McCaffrey and potentially a full game at the weekend. I don't know what his level of fitness is like, but that's a different team this year than it was last year. They have a strength and depth which we haven't seen from them. They have an ability to change the game, and also they now seem to have decided that there's a game plan where we're actually going to try and beat teams by scoring goals. I think there's been a transformation. If say you went into last year's game between Kerry and Dublin, but you knew that Con was going to play and you knew that Mannion was going to play, and that if they need him from the bench, you have Jack McCaffrey. Is it still a last second free from Sean O'Shea to win the game for Kerry, or does that change things significantly?
Don't forget, and I understand what you're saying here, but don't forget that Kerry should have been 7 or 8 points clear in that first half. They weren't.
Sorry, James McCarthy wasn't fully fit last season either for ages.
Totally.
And so I'm now saying that I have McCarthy fully fit. I have Conor Callaghan, who I wasn't sure was going to get back to the same levels, but looks like he's getting back there in terms of his explosiveness. And I have Paul Mannion in the team. So does that team get 7 or 8 points down against Kerry?
We don't know yet. Look, we haven't seen those Dublin lads together yet. It is. I would say they're all quietly confident in Dublin that they've got enough out of this league, and they've had enough people return with All-Ireland medals in their back pocket, and Cluxton, Mannion, McCaffrey, Con being fit. But like, I've been very reluctant to move Dublin and Kerry so far this year because, as you said about Galway, they'll be quietly happy with how the league went and what they've got out of it. You know, Mayo moving into second, grand. You know, a lot of bluster about them at the minute, but that's going off what we're seeing. They have changed. There is a difference there, and there is a bit of a there is a bit more of a structure to how Mayo are played. They're probably the team that have changed the most from last year, from how they played under Horan. The Dubs, Ger, are they going to go more direct? Like, did that kind of just happen against Derry because they weren't kicking points and didn't have people to kick points? They don't have Flynn's and Connollys anymore to flick over points from 45 yards when they're playing against the Blackett defence. Nothing else is working for them. And I would argue that, apart from Con's directness, there was an element of flukiness. The first goal was a square ball.
First goal was definitely a square ball. I did, but
the fourth goal was a fluke.
Before the first goal was scored, there were multiple goal chances in the first half, and one of them comes from John Small, who blasts over and is like killing himself. Like, I can't believe I did that, and then gets the opportunity to fix it in the second half. I was like, okay, that's the AI is learning here, and it's becoming smarter than us.
Did you see the shot of Cluxton afterwards, laughing after Small buried it into the back of the net?
Yeah.
I wonder did Cluxton have forwards in him at half time?
I don't know, but it was certainly.
There you go. Value of bringing them back already.
Look, you're sceptical about it. I'm not sceptical about it.
No, I'm on the fence.
Well, I just want to know what game Ger's playing here. Like, to have Dublin at the top of any power rankings at the moment.
Well, the vast majority of the panel have 6 All-Irelands, or 4 All-Irelands, or 3.5 All-Irelands. Like, many of them know exactly what it takes to win, and so
Kerry
have won. They're not top. They I can have the argument maybe third, but like power rankings, they're not top. Like, this isn't the legacy power rankings. This is the
exactly
up to date.
So Mannion, and so the players on the bench are going to be Scully, Costello, Howard, Paddy Small. They're suddenly the bench has gone from having nothing on it to having loads on it, and I don't know.
That happens. They'll walk the All-Ireland this year.
What do you mean if that happens?
I just don't know if we're going to see that. I don't know if the stars are going to align the way that they're trying to get them to align.
At the moment, everybody's fit, which is really unusual and has been unusual for them. And look, here's the thing. Con gets injured in the first game, does a hamstring or whatever, and is kind of just back in time for preliminary quarter-final weekend. Then it's a different scenario. But as it stands, if James McCarthy is fully fit for the rest of the thing, like, that's at a level that he hasn't been at last season. I don't know. We got to go. But
okay.
So you're saying Kerry are 1, Mayo are 2.
I don't think Kerry have moved. I think Kerry are happy out. Everyone's talking about them going to Portugal this week. They have 3 weeks to get ready. They're going to breeze through Munster, and even if they don't, they're still in an All-Ireland series. They're going to be first seeds if they get through Munster in the round robin. They're going to be perfectly primed. They've been able to time their run. I would say the Dubs are in a similar boat. Galway and Mayo, like, they're going to be fine as well. I do think that is going to be an absolutely sensational July and late June. There's probably going to be a little bit more like the league that we've seen over the next 6, 7, 8 weeks. It's going to be good games, but we're not going to get a full picture of who the real contenders are.
All right, that's this week's episode of the Power Rankings.
Tommy knows his football, obviously listening to football pod the odd time.
And I was looking at the power rankings and I thought that Jesus Owen must still be feeling the effects of these mushrooms.
David Brady, good morning to you. How are you?
Morning, Jared. How's things?
Yeah, very good. Very good. We're just wrapping up Tommy's power rankings there. I don't know if you heard any of that, but I think that there's a couple of months of, 7 or 8 weeks of shadow boxing until we get to All-Ireland quarter-final weekend.
Where'd you put Mayo there during your own? Was it 4th?
I had them 4th, yeah.
4th, yeah. 4th, David. That's what Ger. That's what Ger thinks of Mayo right now.
Yeah, well, you get to an All-Ireland semi-final if you're 4th, and then you see what happens.
Are you fit? You're okay, Ger? Yeah, this weather, yeah. 4th. Is the National League competition not to pick the current best team in form?
No, because Kerry don't care about winning the league this year, having been defending All-Ireland champions in a way that they did last season when they were trying to get some structure around what they were doing and set standards. This year they know the standards and they're trying to find new players. I also think that the Dubs were in Division 2, so maybe if Dublin had been in Division 1, things might have been different, but I'm not sure they would. I think that for Dublin, it's just about getting the depth and making sure everybody's fit by All-Ireland quarter-final weekend.
Yeah, if Dublin were in Division 1, it would have been interesting, but I don't think they're playing the type or style or quality of football that would deliver them a National League title. And you're right about Kerry. They set out, and Jack O'Connor was very open on it. They set about, looking to deliver a league title last year, and they delivered it. I think it has definitely stood to the winners of the Division 1 title over the last number of years. That it has given that momentum, that positivity going forward in the championship. And I think, honestly, I wouldn't. You couldn't have Mayo at current power rankings at number 4. You'd have them. You have to have them the way they're playing from a current perspective, form, quality, depth. I definitely have them at number 1. Current power rankings. We're not Mystic Megs. We're not looking into the future. We're just what we have now and what's there. Definitely the number 1 form team in the country. And as Kevin McStay kind of said, that's something for them to shoulder now. National League champions going into the Connacht Championship next Sunday against Roscommon.
Can I ask you, if that's the case, how come you need your goalkeeper to be man of the match?
Because look at things weren't. That wasn't a perfect performance. It wasn't a perfect game. And again, the point that Cormac Reap got man of the match was one that he got 3 vital frees. There were 2 45s and a long distance. If Galway probably had Shane Walsh on form, or they were better at their long distance free taking, they'd have been in that game a lot more and could have possibly won it. But then the 4 shots that Cormac Reap had to save is down to saying, looking at the video analysis and where did it come from, a lot of it came from some deep running around the middle, through Mayo's half backline, and that's something that Mayo will need to work on, because 4 goals like that, 3 months time, All-Ireland semi-final, 3 out of 4 of them could go in. So that's something definitely Mayo have to work on. But it wasn't a complete performance, but it was enough to win the National League against a very good, well organised, and I mean well organised Galway team.
just in terms of the defensive structure, are there any issues with that? Like, all joking aside and power rankings aside, if you're Mayo and you're looking at how Galway created those opportunities, other teams are going to be looking at that as well. So obviously the one-on-one defending is fine. Keane Johnson's doing a bit of work with us in terms of analysis, and he was making the point that Coyne was all over Finnerty. McBrien and Callan did as well as they could on Shane Walsh, but overall the defensive structure is a bit of an issue. Runners from deep not being tracked, one hand pass takes out 5 or 6 players, and suddenly Galway are through on goal. So part of this is making sure your structures are right, and I suppose that's the point of the league. You Mayo will analyse this as well and go, okay, how did that happen? But is there a structural issue there? Are you happy for those chances to be the way they were, and that's the high wire act that you're playing?
No, I don't think it's a higher wire act or it's a gamble, but I do think that there is certain tweaks, and Conor Loftus again has been transformed. Mayo have kind of struggled to get a very kind of solid centre back over the last number of years. If we remember back, Aidan O'Shea was one of our centre backs in last year's league. So we've struggled from a positional sense like that. And again, from a +1 perspective, as it happened that Conor Loftus wasn't a sitting +1 when the runs from deep came. So it's more or less in their defensive setup. Guys not actually tracking the danger runners. Again, you would be looking at more help from your midfield and half back line on that. You had Peter Cook, you had John Maher getting 2 shots off. So their guys really coming from deep. But someone needs to be more or less marshalling that or picking out the danger runners. And I think it's definitely something Mayo will work on to say why is the runners from deep causing us problems? And it probably kind of adds a little bit more that you need a little bit more help from your half forward line and your midfielders to pick out these runners from deep. Even your full forward line.
Yeah.
Mayo played very defensively at times, massively defensively, which was a ploy, which was a tactic. Aidan O'Shea was probably deeper in the league final than he was in a lot of games because they set up with 14 men completely behind the ball inside their own 45, and that kind of stifles Galway's. If you give Galway space, they kill you with pace, and that kind of when you have a fast team like with Comer and especially Shane Walsh starting off the game there, you are looking to kind of limit the amount of space them guys get.
The Conor Loftus thing I was just going to tease out there. Loftus has been transformed, obviously, right, and has been a revelation in the league. He's not going to be a similar type holding, sitting sweeper. He's not going to be the Cian O'Sullivan. He's not going to be Tyg Morley. So that's why everybody else has to do those duties. Or do you try and turn him into that and stifle his attacking creativity a bit? Is there a trade-off? Or do you just go actually, and maybe this is the next stage of evolution of Gaelic football, is that your centre back is going to be more of a quarterback and more aggressive?
And as you mentioned, them players of the past like Morley and O'Sullivan and just do it to absolute perfection. But it's not an independent role, and it is very much based on the link and the telepathic, I suppose, understanding you have with your players coming around you and who's going to hand off to you or who's going to be your link to say, right, I can go on now once I get the nod or once I get the eyeball or once I know I'm being covered. And I think it's a massive, because again, what it does really is it stifles your inside forward line from being able to inflict damage on you. You have someone sitting in front of them covering the channel, whatever channel the ball is coming down, you need to have that channel covered. If there's runners coming through and you see them, maybe that's a bit of the problem, that the runners are coming through and the gaps are open, and it should be probably the +1 that goes to them. And that's just to say, you know what, I understand now that I should have went to that man, shouldn't have held space, should have pushed up a little bit closer. And again, it's work in progress, but it's a new dimension from Mayo's perspective, and it's he's capable, but it is going to be a very onerous job over the championship. But he has the attacking capability as well, because ball breaks down, you get a turnover. When you have the likes of Jack Coyne going ahead, Sam Callahan going ahead, Conor Loftus going ahead, there's serious attacking threats, and that's what we've seen from especially Coyne and Sam Callahan on Sunday.
We were full of praise for Tommy Conroy yesterday on the show, David, and I think rightly so. We were making the point with Maurice Brosnan that every time he got the ball, Croke Park seemed to light up a little bit. You always expect him to do something and take a man on. those options that Kevin McStay has at full forward, and forward line generally, to be honest, but particularly in full forward when everyone is fit, that's not an easy decision for Kevin McStay to have to make. But then I guess in some ways you finish with your strongest team. How do you see that battle for spots in that full forward line in Mayo?
And now we're talking about the potential from Mayo's perspective, because for the first time, and I've said it, there is that competition for places. Tommy Conroy came on against Donegal, and I don't know what defender it was from Donegal, but he actually just left him for dust. He was electric coming on, really injected massive pace, and you could see that confidence in his, like he is poetry in motion. What you want is to keep him fit and keep him injury free. Killian O'Connor is well on his way to be back. I would be very surprised if he doesn't play a part next Sunday. He's I think he's well on his way there. You have Enda Hessian as well. You have Owen McLaughlin. From a forwards or from a team perspective, you have 3 or 4 fellas that are well capable of coming on, and really that's where you're going to be All Ireland contenders. Just like you were talking there earlier about Dublin. If you don't have that bench, you don't have that strength. Well, then you're going to be found out. You're going to be found out, and I think from a Galway perspective, they're again struggling a little bit with that. We seen it in the All Ireland final last year. They were in it. They were there. But they just needed that to push on, and that usually comes from your bench, that depth and strength. And it wasn't there from a Galway's perspective. Young Tom O'Connor come on, good player, scored in the last minute of the game. But again, you want 2 or 3 more like him to be able to inject a bit of quality and I suppose a bit of spark and attack. Galway have it, or Dublin have it, Mayo now have it, and Kerry have it to a degree.
Pick your full forward line for us.
Number 1, and again last Sunday, Aidan O'Shea. Top class. From a work perspective, from a link perspective, I think he's having his best season so far, because he knows what he has to do. He knows this is his place. And again, he doesn't have to. From a legs perspective, he can protect them and use his strength. And we've seen the amount of frees that he got the last day. For me, I'm Killian. If Killian is fit, simple out. You have Killian, you have Ryan Donoghue, and Aidan O'Shea.
So James Carr and Tommy Conroy on the bench to come in and change the game as and when you need it.
Exactly, and it is horses for courses. I'd have no problem. With Killian out in the half forward line and centre forward.
Okay.
Dictating that if you want to put Tommy in, big time. Yeah. I do think from a half forward perspective, Jordan Flynn has played very well. Probably wasn't his greatest game last Sunday, but there could be potential for Killian to be there around the half forward line. And again, you have that mix and match. You could have Killian going in, Aidan coming out, and you have a perfect man from a target perspective, 60 yards down the pitch with the kick out that Cormac Reeve has as well.
Would you like to see Aidan O'Shea taking over the scoreboard a little bit more? Like he often does that dummy solo where he threatens to shoot and doesn't, but he's doing a lot of other work, I suppose, David, is the point.
Doing it all, he's doing that all year, Shane. Doing that all year. He scored probably more in the league than he has ever, I'd say, in his career. Very good. I said the amount of frees that he's got over the league, because he is, and you're going, like even Sean Armstrong, who was one of the top defenders, he lost him once or twice in that kind of step and that quick turn. And I think it was 3 frees that he got from Mayo that were converted. But no, he's doing exactly what's required, and he's adding so much of that team. And again, it's from a leadership perspective as well. As a senior player there, it's very good. It's very good.
I think only 4 of Mayo's points were from play off the 14, but that's not really a concern either. I guess you have to be, as you say, getting forward and earning frees, and there was a couple of attacking marks in there as well, so it's not really that big a concern, David, is it?
Well, you're kind of going, you don't like to say you've only scored 4 times from play, and I think Porrick Joyce alluded to that, to say, well, they only scored 4 points from play and the referee wasn't really on our side and blah blah blah. They got their marks, and again, it has been a feature. I think Ryan Donoghue has got, he's nearly in double figures for marks this year. He got 2 the last day. And again, it is that added, you look at Paddy Durkin, who is just a gazelle. Every time he looks up, and his first thought is there someone I can pick out? Is there a kick pass I can give? If not, then he goes on his bike. But it is that added fluidity that Mayo have brought to their game this year. The kick pass, you have a fulcrum there the vast majority of the time in Nedum Onuoha. Mayo didn't keep 2 up or 1 up from a defence or from an attacking point of view. They had everyone back at times. But when you have everyone back, it creates that avenue for your attack. And again, as I mentioned, Jack Coyne and Sam Callahan in the full back line, that was a massive step for them on Sunday, because they're young, they're enthusiastic. Experience comes with time. They need time. But winning the National League title was a very, very important step for them last Sunday.
In 2001, Mayo beat Galway in the league by a point, and then
don't talk to me. I know what you're going to say.
And then the Rossies caught them, and then Galway went on to win the All Ireland.
I know. And that was for me again. National League final against Galway in 2001. And I'm being straight and honest. I hate them when it comes to football. They're lovely people, but I hate them when it comes to football. And again, it was nice to have a little smile after the game on Sunday, because there is that rivalry, there is that intensity. 2001, Galway had the last smile. They won the All Ireland, and it is going back to the 96, 97, 98 rivalry, hatred. But it brought the level of football between the two counties and in Connacht up that step. And again, you have it now, 2 teams. You look and Porrick Joyce has done a phenomenal job. And we can look, I'd say, to look at 3 years ago, Galway were probably in the same situation as a Meath. They were just plodding along in the football world, Division 2, they're thereabouts. And now look at the steps and development that Galway have taken. All Ireland final, you think, they might go on the beer, there might be a lot of negativity, or they might take them a time to get back on the bike. National League final. And I wouldn't be surprised. As they'll be up there right contenders in the last 4, the last 2. And wouldn't it be great? And there's the possibility of having a Mayo Galway final this year. So that'll be one for the ages. But it's a credit to both counties, the managements, especially Porrick Joyce and his team, the way he has brought this Galway team, young, under 21 on gym session, but they'll be doing.
Is that a foregone conclusion, David?
By no means is it a foregone conclusion, but you have to say to yourself, if you really adapt and play to your ability and execute your game plan as you should, 2 teams versus each other, Mayo should should definitely come out on top.
You're giving Davy Burke some material here.
I'm not giving them material, because Davy knows they'll be within that game. Are they National League champions? Mayo are. And again, Mayo are favourites for the game. And 9 times out of 10, favourites win. And I think it's I don't mind the week. I think it's nearly a good thing that they're going back straight on the bike again after that game on Sunday to a game next Sunday in McHale Park at 4:00. I think. You have to be confident, and you should be confident. And I think they have definitely enough, and to have that kind of capability and depth and strength from a bench perspective.
2019 was the other time that Mayo won the league and then got beaten by Roscommon in the championship. That's the last 2 times. It doesn't make any sense. 2001
doesn't make any sense for it to happen the 3rd time.
2001 has no bearing on this one. It's true. It's just that it's a nice little quirk there that there's an opportunity for this Mayo team to make their own bit of history twice in a week.
And if I'm right, I think that Mayo had a big gap in 2019, something like a 5-week gap to the Roscommon game or something. But it doesn't matter if it's a week, 5 days, or 5 weeks. It's about getting the mindset right. And as Kevin McStay said on Sunday, that was after his press conference. He was going in, there was 38 of the squad, the backroom team, and it was the focus for Roscommon. And and again, we go back. Kevin McStay knows this Roscommon team, or knows Roscommon football as good as anyone. He's been there, he's managed them, he's had success with them.
Yeah.
So he'll be well up for this as well.
One last one. Notwithstanding everything we were talking about, the defence and the defensive structure, is there any bat signal that you do as the manager at this stage, given everything else that's going on everywhere else around the country, to Lee Keegan to say we could do with a sweeper style 6 who can complement Conor Loftus. Are you interested?
Oh, sure, look, and would you be interested in Oisin Mullen, and would you be interested in everything? You know, it's unfortunately at this step, no, you wouldn't in any way, shape or form bring someone out from the cold into the red heat of championship, not having played any league game. It's different from a goalkeeper. It's different, you know, legs, fitness and everything else. You're out of it for 6 months, and even players coming back from injury do struggle to get up to the level and to the momentum of senior championship football. And no, unfortunately, that won't be happening. That won't be happening. But I do think, I honestly, I think Lee would be a massive advantage if he was still there.
So, like,
if we look back,
there will be game time in the round robin. That doesn't really matter. There's more than likely in Mayo's scenario, like if they get through the Roscommon game, then you could definitely say there will be a game where they're guaranteed to be going through after, you know, no matter what division they're in. It's very unlikely there's going to be a group of death, and even then there'll be a preliminary quarter final, as we've been talking about, that they'll be safe. So there's enough games to get somebody back in if you wanted it.
There's not, honest to God, okay. Not. No way. There's one game is not enough. 2 games, in-house games. There's 5 months of hard work and toil. Nearly 6 from these guys last November when they met up with Kevin McStay. They've done a massive amount of work. Donny Buckley has pushed them to their very, very, very limit. And again, it's very hard. I remember coming back. I came back into Mayo setup. I was over in Australia, living life. I came back around April time, and I just absolutely struggled to get back in. Yes, I got back in, and we went to the All Ireland final. I played, but you have it'll be too much for someone that at Lee Keegan's age as well to come and just try and get back on that train. His mind will be 100% capable, but no, don't, Francis, don't be starting any rumours. That won't. I'd have told you by now, Ger. I'd have told you by now.
We're just suggesting it. Don't worry.
Yeah,
TV,
yeah.
You're feeling good about life, though. You have the number one in your power rankings.
Oh, without a doubt, number one in the current power rankings. Without a doubt, yeah. And I'm proud of it. They're a very good squad. And again, I just love what Kevin McStay is bringing, the open honesty and modesty as well. I think that's a very, very important part of the journey of what Mayo will be going on this year. Yeah, he's been a real breath of fresh air, and it looks like he's enjoying every second of it, as we are in your company again, DV. Thanks a million. Pleasure, Ger. Talk to you, Shane, buddy. Cheers, David. I have to say, I'm going to go out on a limb here. I think Roscommon are waiting. They are waiting for this game. And I know the games in Castlebar, but I think there are good things happening with this Roscommon team. They started off the league with those 3 wins. As I pointed out there, Mayo scored 4 points from playing Croke Park at the weekend. I know it's relevant. Every game's different. Roscommon kicked 20 points from playing their last league game. But points scored from a mark are points from play. I know, of course. Yeah, fair. They are. This whole they scored a lot of points from marks. That doesn't count. They do. They count exactly the same on the scoreboard. And you created the opportunity from open play for that to happen. We have to stop saying, they're kicking these a mark. There's the argument, as David says, of the week. That, it's good for Mayo to continue the week and hashtag momentum. But Roscommon have the rested legs compared to Mayo. That regardless of what way you look at it, having a league final on Sunday, and look, they desperately wanted that match put to Saturday for a reason, because 24 hours is a big difference at this stage. But Roscommon have had an extra week. That has to have a significant factor as well. I just think it's going to be a much closer game than people realise, and I would not be at all surprised if we're looking at a Roscommon Galway Connacht semi-final. Yeah, the bye week in American football, it's one of the things that the whole season revolves around, and it has tended to be a decisive factor when it has come to outcomes. Now, the best teams get the bye week in American football. This isn't necessarily the case according to the current standings in the Gaelic Football Championship, but we shall see, and we'll preview that game in a bit more detail as the week goes on. But as Tommy said, there are a slew of championship games this weekend,
some of which are very much under the radar because it's just so many of them. But it is 8:55 and you are watching on youtube.com/off the ball, or you're listening to us on OTB Sports Radio. However you're with us this morning, we're glad to have you. And a reminder, OTB AM is live with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night edition available now. Turning back to football, and it's been a wild 4 or 5 days on and off the field. I'm delighted to say Nedum Onuoha is with us to talk to us a bit about what is going on with the managerial merry-go-round. Nedum, good morning to you. How are you?
I'm very good, thanks. How are you?
What's the best available job in the Premier League at the moment if you're an aspiring manager who believes you can have an impact?
Oh my goodness. I don't know. I think given the fact that they've had to make these changes this late in the season, it maybe suggests that things aren't as good as they need to be. And then you could say maybe like Chelsea, the team that have greater aspirations of winning things going forward, but we don't even know what they look like next season. And then the Spurs element as well. How does that look? And then Leicester City, they're far better in theory, the football club, than where they're at this moment position-wise. So you need to know that they're going to be in the Premier League to be optimistic and think that's a good job. So ultimately, all three of them are tough situations to come into. So I don't know. I think it's a good question.
The Chelsea situation, just to start with that one, where they aren't quite clear what they're trying to do at a corporate level, and that's having an impact on the number of players they've signed. We're told today that Chelsea can't have their first team change in the changing room at the same time because the room isn't big enough. Is that credible? Is that a real thing, do you think?
I think it could be a real thing because most first team change rooms probably house around 25 people. So for them, they probably have a few more. Sorry, they have more than that. And they've got the supplementary young players that come through as well. So I do believe there is a chance that that is true. And that is a bit awkward because usually when somebody comes, it's because someone else has left. But they've got such a large amount of signings at this moment in time that that's the unfortunate situation for them. And it's just a shame that for some people, the writing's on the wall when you're the person that can't change first. But that's the way football goes, I guess. So there is a chance that could be real. And they've played themselves into that situation. But then what I'd say about Chelsea as well, they've also got a dressing room for people who go on loan who aren't going to play for the first team, people who don't have ambitions of that and so on and so forth. So they do have a lot of players. And it's just crazy that now they've got too many players because volume and signings for Chelsea tends to be a standard thing, to be honest.
Not great for team spirit / morale / togetherness, or I've got your back. It's like, oh, hang on, that you're in my seat.
Yeah, I suppose that's the thing. If you were there and somebody new came in and they took your seat, I think that's a bigger offence than, say, you going on loan somewhere and then coming back and seeing someone's now in your seat. And team spirit is one of those, like, it matters more so when things aren't going well, because when things are going well, everybody's happy, everybody's in a position. And this sort of locker room situation, you could potentially have it as more of a joke. It's like, oh gosh, I can't believe you took my seat. Oh, I'm just going to go and change out here. But all of a sudden, when the team's not winning and you're not playing, it's actually a huge insult. So I think you've made a good point about team morale, but then that's ultimately the way that most teams would be if they weren't winning too many games.
Can that turn toxic pretty quickly, Nedum? Because let's be honest, like, there's a lot of egos in any football dressing room, especially that Chelsea one with the names you see. And I know you were at Queen's Park Rangers when there were a lot of players on that squad, and it's not exactly a similar situation, but it's not dissimilar either. Is that a difficult thing over time? Does a bit of toxicity build up?
I think it can do, but I think the way that recruitment's done now, like, I think they try and find people who'd be disappointed if they're not playing, but not necessarily find people who would spread that disappointment and take something away from the team. Like, I think clubs are getting better at sort of removing that one toxic person, because it's fair enough that someone can be down and negative if they're not playing and so on, but do they bring more people with them? Do they make it sort of, the us versus them? Do they create a little group against the manager? Not every club is in that situation where that's the case. That's what I went through a little bit at QPR, and to be fair, Man City and other places as well. But I think it's about recruiting the people as well as just the players, because, at the very top, everybody wants to play and everyone believes that they can play. So if people are happy to walk into training ground, know they're not playing, I think it misses the point. But it's just about how do they react from there, because for some, they revert to hard work. But if they've got the wrong type of person, then before you know it, they decide to choose destruction. And as a consequence, managers end up potentially losing their jobs. And there's a real sort of sad feeling when you arrive at the training ground, which shouldn't be the case when you're playing, when you've got one of the best jobs in the world. Are
teams getting better at finding out about the character of players, or like you kind of have to go back to underage coaches to get that type of information, and even then they need to trust you to tell you the truth about somebody. Actually, you know what, he's a brilliant footballer, but he can be a bit of an asshole sometimes. How do you scout that information, the kind of intangibles?
So firstly, I think this has happened for a long time, but there's a lot of like reference work. You know, a manager might speak to another manager, they'll speak to other members of the football club, they'll ask players to speak to teammates and also like international teammates and alike. And there is quite a lot of work that goes into it. You know, a lot of the scouting departments, it's more than just a case of seeing how somebody performs at a World Cup and deciding, well, that skill set's going to work for us. But then I think where it falls down, and this is a big divide between a manager signing a player and a football club signing a player, because the manager might just know someone and like someone, but they know about their flaws. Whereas for the team themselves, they're thinking about signing someone that's going to be there for 4, 5, 6 years. So they need it to fall in line with the values of the football club. But when the manager gets final say and say first option, whoever he wants, then sometimes they'll just go down that road. But then all of a sudden, what happens when the player that the manager signs is now left in a club where the manager's left? Are they going to be as productive and positive as somebody who was signed in the bigger picture who wants to play for the club as opposed to the manager themselves? So I think there is research that is there. They do speak to absolutely everyone. And if Man City are the example that I can, reference pretty well, but they do years worth of research into players, not just on the field stuff, but off the field stuff. So they know what the type of person is when they walk into the football club, because they know that ultimately to be successful, it only takes 1 or 2 people going in the wrong direction for everything to fall apart. And for them, it seems like overall, I stress overall, because there've obviously been 1 or 2 exceptions. Overall, they've done pretty well with that, I'd say.
I feel a little bit sorry for Graham Potter in the way it's ended, but a lot of people kind of saw the writing on the wall. They thought this was going to be a difficult position. I was fascinated, Nedum, yesterday to read about this idea that Todd Bowley and Begdad Iqbali, the Chelsea co-owners, have concerns about someone like Julian Nagelsmann, who's only 35, because of his age. Would that be an issue in the dressing room that for Chelsea players that might look around and say, well, he's 35, so does that take away some of the authority that he might have?
I think the authority will come if he's being supported by the board and being supported by the senior players within the group, because the age itself, I've seen managers who are 50, 60 years of age who don't have any sort of authority over players as well, because they're just a little bit soft and they don't have the backing of the board themselves. So when they come in, they're essentially just a puppet as opposed to being somebody who can dictate the direction that the club's going to be going in. So I think for Nagelsmann, yes, he's 35, but we know him already because of 2 jobs that he's already done. And, this contentious sacking at Bayern Munich, but you still had them on, I think, for a treble. So he's clearly not the worst manager in the world. And his age, it might be a factor. But when he walks in there, as a player, for me, you always see how they carry themselves. You see the training sessions they put forward. You see the ideas that they want to implement. And you see whether they're able to make their vision come into reality by the way that they coach you as a player and as a team. And if they're doing that well, you never really get so concerned about the age that they're at, because, there are older managers who are failing. So, let's not necessarily say somebody will fail because they are young. In the same way that I think for Potter, he was always in a tough position because people were doubting him before he'd even started working there, because he said, well, he's not been here, he's not been there. Well, realistically, if the players that they have are really good professionals, then does the history of the manager matter? Or is it more a case of trying to instill or listen to what he's saying to try and get them to play how he wants? And as a consequence, a lot of people expected him to fail, which I think is quite a tough position to be in. And I think his role and his moment in football history was very important, because that blueprint in terms of going through the ranks and then arriving at a club like that now feels that a little bit further away for the next person who's going to try and do it, because from when they arrive, they'll expect you to fail now, just like Graham Potter did. And that's tough, because at the end of the day, they haven't been great. But you look at the last game against Aston Villa, which they lost, and they had enough chances to win the game, but still they lose. So now he's lost his job, and maybe as a big reaction to that game, it's not the worst football that's ever been seen. And on a different day, they probably win the game, but because they miss chances, before you know it, he's finding his way out of Chelsea.
Yeah, and we were talking a bit about this in the build-up to the Villa game and the aftermath. Arteta went through difficult periods, but learned on the job and had the backing of the entire operation. There was definitely noise around Arteta that potentially he was going to be in trouble, but the Cronkies and the relevant people squashed it pretty quickly, and the noise disappeared. It just feels like at Chelsea they don't really know how to manage the media and any of the noise around it, and it doesn't really feel like they know what they're doing, and that kind of transmitted itself a little bit to Potter having too many players.
Yeah, I would say that's fair. I think the way that they did the transfer business last summer is a bit different to how they did it in January, and I think they've got two sort of director type roles which have come in there, which are going to try and make things a bit simpler. But ultimately, I think some of the owners who are within the football club now, this is all very new to them. Some of the other sports that they're in are different. But as I say, this is new, so they need as much sort of like advice and guidance as they can find. And I think there are one or two people who are capable of helping them make those decisions going forward now. But I was finding out yesterday, interestingly, so Todd Bowley feels like he's the front and centre of it all, but he doesn't make those big decisions. There are other people, because he's part of three, I think, that do make those calls. But he's just the most visible one. I think if the other two people turned up, none of us would really know who they are. But I think in time, they'll learn to understand that visibility is a big thing within football, and sort of explaining decisions and why a club's doing this and why a club's doing that, to make it seem like you really have a true grasp of what you're doing. Because at the end of the day, they must have some sort of idea. So they're not managing this moment very well at all, but it's still very early within their tenureship. And what I would say was, we were always wondering when he would get sacked, because that kind of sets the tone for what's to come next. And they don't want to, it didn't seem to me like they wanted to be like Abramovich was, whereby if you didn't win a trophy, out you go. But still, this performance has led to them being in the spot. And what I would say is a comparison for Arteta, in my opinion, the fact that Arteta played a lot of games for Arsenal meant that he probably was given more time than, say, someone else would have done. When you look at the likes of Emery and the like, who didn't do that bad a job there. But for Arteta, because the club is essentially in his heart as such, and he can explain to the fans and to people what it actually means and what he's trying to go for before you know he's given time. And in times leading to them potentially winning the Premier League this season. So I think every situation is slightly different, unfortunately.
It's a fair point. And he also had the kind of the impact of having worked under Pep as part of his CV. So he's been at a super club. He knows what it takes. He's been involved in match day. When Potter came out and said he'd never been to a Champions League game, it was like, maybe don't say that. You don't have to tell us all your truth all the time. There's bits that you can keep back a little bit, and that's private between you, and let's wait and see what happens, because he's actually doing okay in the Champions League, it turns out. You know, they've got Real Madrid, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens. Can I ask you, Brendan Rodgers isn't getting linked with the Spurs job at the moment. He's not getting linked with the Chelsea job, even though he has a track record at the club. And for me, that doesn't make that much sense. Is there something that we don't really understand? Are there bad reports coming from players, or something that's preventing owners from going shopping with Brendan Rodgers?
That's a good question, because I did wonder that myself. And having been someone, you know, that he's coached Liverpool, and he did a pretty good job there. Obviously, didn't necessarily end the way that he would have wanted it to end. And then he's won an FA Cup with Leicester City. Came close to getting them in the Champions League. You'd think his stock would be quite high, but unfortunately, I think the way that their season's going at this moment in time just means that he's not being spoken about in the way, say, he was 18 months ago when he's being linked with the Man United job and things like that. But I think, as we all know ourselves, those initial reports about who's linked and so on and so forth, they're so early that most of them tend to miss the mark. Unless the appointment happens instantly, it misses the mark. Whereas for now, I'm getting a sort of vibe that maybe one or two of these club situations will be fully dealt with coming this summer. And I think once he's had some time away, I think you might see his name start appearing more there, and they can probably understand that he's got a more clearer picture in terms of what he wants to achieve and how he believes he can help the club achieve their own objectives as well. So I think he'll be in work next season, and I wouldn't be surprised if it was for maybe Spurs. I think that's the way I'm thinking at this moment in time. But yeah, for now, I think most of those teams just looking for some element of just short-term stability. And then when the summer comes, just kick in with a long-term goal. And I think Brendan Rodgers could definitely do that.
But I suppose the likes of Rodgers has to wait and see. We've talked about the Harry Kane situation, whether or not he's still going to be there next season, but also whether or not Spurs get top four. So is someone like Brendan Rodgers looking at what's happening in North London and thinking, well, I wouldn't mind waiting and seeing at the end of the season. But it's a risky one as well, Nedum, because jobs might not be available.
Yeah, exactly. You really don't know. But I think whoever's going to be coming in there in the summer might have a little idea, at this point, that they could be potentially being linked, and they might hope and wish that they make the top four and that Harry Kane stays and the like. But the fact is, the job is still an enticing job. I think if everything was solely dependent on that, then we'd have issues, because teams do not qualify for the Champions League every year. And for some of these big clubs who are striving to be successful, there are two sides to this, because some people say, oh, why would Bellingham go to Liverpool if they don't qualify for the Champions League, so on and so forth? Well, the answer is because it's Liverpool. And secondly to that, you can either come in at a point where a club is qualified for the Champions League, or you come in and it's the project now is to get us back to where we were. The project now is to make us great. And I think that's just as enticing for some managers and players than, say, what people would like to believe. So I think for Brendan Rodgers, if it ends up that they don't qualify for the Champions League and he's linked with there and he gets the chance to go, he'll genuinely believe he can go there and help them qualify for the Champions League and win a trophy for the first time, I think, in 15, 16 years. So I don't think that stuff is as conditional as we maybe think. And you made a good point, though. At the end of the day, work is work. So if you can find it, then there's no reason to turn it down, is there?
Brendan Rodgers feels a little bit to me like in the Eddie Howe territory, where Howe took such a long period of time out of football and waited and waited and waited and waited. And the situation that he comes back into in Newcastle, in a way, is perfect. But he did take a team down and managed to get that off his CV in a way. Leicester aren't going to go down yet, and if they do, it now won't officially be Brendan Rodgers' fault or responsibility. So maybe there just needs to be a little bit where his reputation gets less imprisoned by the moment, and we look back on, bringing a Liverpool team from a desperate situation to a point where they were very close to winning a title with Celtic, Champions League football and all that understanding of that. And I agree with you. I think it might actually be better for him if Harry Kane is gone and they're not in the Champions League next season, because then he can be the one who turns that situation around. One last question about Arsenal and the way things are going at the moment. The win at the weekend was really important because you've seen what Manchester City have done, and it's against a Liverpool team, and there's a big statement for you, and you just come out and you just do your business. That, in a way, it's almost one of the most impressive Arsenal performances that we've seen.
Yeah, it certainly was. But then I think to a certain extent, that's more so with us from the outside overreacting to the game that kicks off so early, because all the pressure's now on Arsenal, but they still had a 5-point lead. Even if they would have drawn that game, then at the end of the day, there's still, that 6-point gap or whatever. So I wouldn't. Let's just say it makes a big deal because a lot of noise has been made about, they would have asked Arteta before the game, what do you think after seeing that first game? What do you think about this? What do you think about that? But ultimately, the game, the title, it's in their hands. Man City can win every game this season in the Premier League that's left and still lose the title. That says a lot about how good Arsenal have been. And I think for Arsenal, they've been fantastic. I think they've won their last 5-6 league games in a row. And to a certain extent, at times, they've won them quite comfortably. And that game there, seeing Gabriel Jesus back playing through the middle, scoring 2 goals, the noise at the Emirates in terms of the crowd going off, they know there's a good feeling there and they're so close to the end. And watching Man City win is always going to be stressful. But at the end of the day, one of the sides is going to have to watch the other team win anyway. So it makes you think, well, this must-win game is now a must-win game now. Nothing really changes from that standpoint. But it's a great reaction. The fans saw it. 60,000 fans saw them play well, score 4 goals, and just give that energy back and just disregard what came before. And that's what they need to do, I think, through now the end of the season if they want to win the title. Barring that game against City at the end of April, just win your games and you don't have to worry about what Man City are doing. And that's a great position to be in at this time of year because most of the teams don't have that luxury.
Nedum, as a final one for me, as a defender, you'd have come across a lot of strikers who have engaged in dark arts over the years, and we were talking this morning on the show about Harry Kane and the reaction to the Doucouré incident last night, where he goes down like a sack of spuds, really. He goes down quite easily, albeit it probably was a red card. What's your take on those Kane incidents where he appears to go down quite easily? And also, I guess over here it's difficult for us. The English media reaction, is it different? Is Harry Kane treated differently because he is the England captain?
Perhaps a little bit, yeah. I think there are certain individuals, say pundits and so on, who might sort of say, that's a bit soft, but they try not to go too hard because it is Harry Kane. And for me, that's his game. He wins so many free kicks and causes so much of a stir on the field. But it's the gamesmanship that he's learned across the years. And at the end of the day, if we want it to stop, it's down to the referees because, Jack Grealish gets a lot of grief for winning so many free kicks. Harry Kane feels like he wins just as many, and it's usually really soft things. And Harry's is a big guy, but he wins so many free kicks, and it's through just little things, little nudges, slowing down so somebody pushes him over and stuff. And that's the way he plays the game. And it's no surprise that he went down when he was touched in the face, but that's just, as I say, that's who it is, and he can be frustrated by it. And for me, he went down, but just like to see him just get back up, because if it's a red, it's a red. the ref would have seen it, the video assistant referee would have seen it as well, and they wouldn't have unlikely changed the outcome because he didn't stay down. So that's who he is. I think people have to get used to it, and I think a lot of people do like Harry Kane, so they do try and give him an element of the benefit of the doubt, say, oh, he went down easy, but it's still a red card. But unfortunately, this is the way football is, this is the way it's refereed, and this is how he plays the game. He's obviously England's top goal scorer for Spurs, so he's very much revered. So listen, it's not going to change anytime soon, unfortunately.
Nedum, great to have you with us this morning. Thanks a million. Cheers.
Cheers, thank you.
It's Nedum Onuoha giving us some thoughts on the football situation at the moment. There is an interesting slate of games tonight. If you're unaware, there's loads of Premier League action this evening, and obviously they'll be keeping you up to date on how the games go. So tonight it's Bournemouth at home to Brighton, and we think that Ferguson's going to be back in the first team squad. They said that they would wait and see, but they've been talking about him in a way that would suggest he is. Leeds are at home to Nottingham Forest, which is obviously a bit of a 6-pointer. Leicester are at home to Aston Villa. Will there be a new manager bounce for Leicester when they don't actually have their new manager?
Maybe, because sometimes
is there freedom from...
Yeah, the atmosphere can get toxic if players who didn't like Rodgers being there all of a sudden free up.
They're all the 7:45 kickoffs. Of course, if Villa win that, they're looking up. And then, obviously, the big game tonight is Chelsea at home to Liverpool. And again, that whole point. Is there a new manager bounce when you don't have a new manager? Are the team suddenly going to take charge? And it was Potter who was holding them back? All those chances they're creating suddenly become goals. And they win 7-0.
All of a sudden, 34 players don't have a manager. So is that a good thing or a bad thing? I think in a smaller squad, probably the manager leaving is a good thing. But this one is just complicated, isn't it? Bruno Salter popping in. It's going to be an interesting game, but two teams with a bad weekend behind them, so one of them has to kind of bounce back. It could be a draw, like one of those games that could be a draw. Like Liverpool need to win though.
16 minutes past 9 this morning. Here are some highlights on the OTB Podcast Network for you today. Monday Night Rugby with Fiona Hayes and Jerry Thornley. A new episode of the Football Pod and a new episode of Koi Gig. You can follow Off the Ball across our social channels and make sure you subscribe to the OTB Podcast Network. After the break, Matt Williams previews Leicester in the Champions Cup. First, Fiona and Jerry on last night's Monday Night Rugby with Joe talking about Munster's Conor Murray.
Hindsight is 20/20 vision, and you could say the second row selection, it was a tough first start for RG Snyman and so long to bring him back for that game particularly. Was he ready for it? Finn Wycherley did quite well when he came on. Now admittedly they'd lost Tyke Byrne, which was very unfortunate. The other one I'd question, and I'd questioned it on Friday when I saw the teams, was I mean, you need as much physicality as you can against a South African side laden with Springboks, and I thought that was much more game for Conor Murray than it was for Craig Casey. I felt sorry for Craig Casey and what he was having to deal with. He wasn't just having to excavate for ball, he was dealing with a few human tornadoes coming at him as well. But I just think maybe their plan was to try and build up a lead in the first half and then have Conor Murray to come on to try and close out the game. But it's certainly, in hindsight, you could question those two selections, but elsewhere you couldn't. Like, that's pretty much the hand. Graham Roundtree and Dennis Leamy and Mike Prendergast have been dealt. The front row, nobody had you couldn't any qualms with that. Back row, not really. Jack Crowley, I think, justified his selection. He looks very composed. He's got footwork. He's got a very good passing game. He kicked well. They're the first choice midfielders, pretty much. And certainly, Shane Daly and Calvin Nash particularly deserve their spots. And Mike Healy's been their go-to fullback. So you couldn't say that there were bundles of options here.
You're listening
to OTB AM.
Off the ball.
This beautiful country with so many incredible sports stars are going to open up the World Cup and just set an example for so many. And hopefully, touch wood, my sister and Katie will be there, and it's just going to be this beautiful occasion that everybody enjoys and just savours that moment and go, God, we've done it. Now let's just be defensively solid and just try and get a couple of goals and beat Australia and get out of the group. It's going to be so hard, but enjoy it.
You almost made me forget that we actually had to play a match after all that. Then I was like, oh yeah, we actually have to play Australia.
To play the Matildas. Good luck with that.
Subscribe now to the OTB Football Podcast stream wherever you get your podcasts and download the OTB Sports app.
OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
So Leinster play Leicester on Good Friday in the Aviva. I'm delighted to say Matt Williams is with us to help preview the game. Matt, good morning to you. How you getting on?
Good morning, Ger. Morning, Shane. Very, very good, mate, as always.
Fingers crossed the weather's slightly better and we get to see Leinster play more of their natural game against Leicester on Friday. Where are Leinster at the moment? Because it's difficult after a game like that where you're so heavily favourites against a team who you definitely have the number of, and you're just getting all your players back into your system. So there was a little bit of dirty diesel that they had to get out of their system, and then just as the game wore on, the cream rose to the top. So what as a coach are you looking for this week to get them a slight beat higher than they were against Ulster?
You described it very well, Ger. I was watching the match, and a few of the old mafia of Leinster players and staff, there was a few texts, and one of them, a great mate of mine, Brady, says, they're very slow out of the blocks. They're not together. And then if we consider Leinster's last few months, the last time that group played in a blue jersey was January. So it's understandable, and not only understandable, it's to be expected that they came into that match not mentally unprepared. They would have been very much looking forward to it and keen after the joys of the Six Nations and the Grand Slam. But there's a whole lot of things they had to overcome, the emotions of the Grand Slam, getting their head back into it, back into the Leinster system, back playing again in the Leinster system, although it's almost identical to the Irish system, but it's just different, and that takes a bit of time. But you could see as the game went on, the confidence was there, the class was there, the determination was there, and it moved forward. And I think Leo would be, I think he'd be delighted with the last two games, not just the last game against Ulster, but the game prior to that against the Sharks at the RDS, which was one of the ballsiest, bravest draws I have ever seen. And I think Leo would be absolutely delighted with the determination the younger guys showed and the older guys showed that say to this team, the team that ran out against Ulster and will run out against Leicester, that there's something behind the club that is driving it forward, and that is an anger from what happened to them last year and a drive to get it right. And the fact that Sexton's not there is obviously a major blow. But I do think it's also a driving factor to say, well, we've got to overcome this. And obviously Josh Van der Fleer is not going to be there this week. But I think for the motivation and the drive and the fact that it's in Dublin again, and they know the final's in Dublin, but hopefully a semi-final as well, that they've got a whole lot of pluses to keep fighting for.
In a week like this again, where they are favourites against a Leicester side who they managed to beat at the same stage of the competition last year, it's not a question of complacency. It's just a question of making sure that you're the ones doing the controlling of the game flow. So what are you focusing on as a group and as a team? Is it just fundamentals? Is that all you can do in a week like this? Is just make sure that the scrum is good, the line is good, our restarts are good, your skills are good, and then after that we know exactly what we're trying to do here? Pretty much. They've only got a 6-day turnaround. They drew the Friday evening, which is, it throws your week out. That 24 hours is crucial. And I think what Leinster do better than just about anyone since at club level since Joe Schmidt's time is they get their week's preparation very, very accurate, as in the rest to work ratio. So they're peaking and feeling at their best for Friday night. These guys have had a long year. They've the majority of that team has just won a Grand Slam, as I said. So they're still match fit. They don't have to worry about that. They've just got to get there. That the difference between Leinster playing brilliantly and playing average is getting the ball in front to your hands or getting the ball back to your shoulder. If the ball's back here, they don't play brilliantly. If the ball's here, their system just clicked. And there's another part to that, which is shutting down what Leicester do, which is an aerial game, a very strong kicking game and a very dominant forward pack. So like all these big games, it's going to be the boys up front that get the domination, lay down the platform, and if they lay down the platform, it'll make Jamison Gibson Park and Ross Burns' role so much more, I wouldn't say easier, but it'll allow them to be more effective. And if they're effective, that'll get that back line and the whole attack going. So you're right, there are some basics, and obviously a set play is part of it, but it's just the difference of success is literally a few millimetres and centimetres between where the passes go. And it was a wet day. You could see a lot of the passes were back on that inside shoulder. So if you're getting a pass on your inside shoulder, you have to wait. Whereas if what Leinster do really well is get a pass out in front, they accelerate onto the ball, get their footwork going, they're a handful.
You mentioned the fundamentals there, Matt, of the Leicester Tigers team, like the kicking game and winning the aerial contest and that sort of thing. And Wigglesworth has put his stamp on the team as well since he's come in. But is it just more difficult for a team to do that when you're away from home? Like Leicester Tigers at Welford Road, for example, will be a much different prospect to perhaps this Friday.
Oh, I have shown you're spot on. There's been so many studies done on this home and away success rate, and because it's not a rugby thing, it's a sports thing across both genders, men and women's game. If you're at home, your chances of success are exponentially higher than when you're on the road, and that's just a human thing. It's just the psychology of it. And they've tried. So many sports psychs have tried to define it and change it, and it's just how we're wired. We come home, we relax when you're in your own home. We use that word, our ground. We say, well, that's our home. So you come in and it's familiar. It's got the ring of success about it when you talk about the Aviva or the RDS to Leinster, because they've been successful there as a club and as with their national team as well. So there is a huge advantage of being at home. The other one is you don't have to get on a plane. You don't have to be in a hotel. All these little wearying things that do drag you back, as I'm sure if you talk to the Munster boys after being forced to go to South Africa last week and then come home and those poor blokes just be shattered in that travel. So there are a number of physical factors to it, but it's just that feeling, that security. It doesn't guarantee you anything, but Leicester away definitely is a much less daunting task than going to Walford Road, which is one of the toughest places in club rugby in the world to go. Having said all that, the way Leicester play is not a style of rugby I'm a fan of. I think it's an awful way of playing the game, but I also have to admit it's highly effective. The kicking game, which we go back a few years, and contesting, it takes out the need to have an organised offence. You're going forward through the boot. So you don't have to get organised like Leinster and the Irish teams are trying to do so correctly, and the French teams where you're putting the ball through a series of passes to create space, then attack space. You're not creating the space because the space is behind the defensive line. You're just attacking it with a kick. It's awful to watch, but it's effective. So if you don't deal with that, as in the high ball, if you don't deal with the kicks well and you give the opposition the ball back or you make errors on it, that invites them into the game. So I guess it comes back to Ger's original question, what do you have to do? You have to impose yourself on the game. We hear that often. What does it mean? If you get your game plan going against your opposition, what's your plan in defence and what's your plan in attack? If you get that going and can impose it on the opposition, you'll win that game. And Leinster are the best or one of the best in the world at club rugby of imposing their game on the opposition. And again, if we come back 2 weeks ago when you had the younger players and some of the old Warriors in there against the Sharks, at 17-0 down, how did they get in that game? They imposed themselves and their game plan on the opposition with some absolutely inspirational, desperational defence. And that's part of their plan, that they never beaten, they never quit, they don't know how to lose, and they just kept going at it. So all those factors add up to denying Leicester that kicking game, which is awful, as I said, but it is effective.
I know that obviously the replacement of Sexton is a distributed thing and his leadership needs to be distributed amongst the pack and everybody else, but there will automatically be focus on who fills the 10 jersey, and it's clear that the role of understudy is, at the moment, we know who that is. Having said that, Crowley was picked at the weekend for Munster and is probably going to play 10 for the rest of the season from their perspective, and how they go in the rest of the URC will probably define how close he gets to being second choice. But it's right there at the moment for Ross Byrne. If he puts in 3-4 weeks of good quality, he's going to be our number 2 10 in the World Cup, and there's a lot of game time for that player given Sexton's injury profile. So it's fair to say this is a big few weeks for him.
It absolutely is a massive few weeks for Ross. I've been a big supporter of Ross Byrne over the years. I believe in the young man. I just admire how he's handled himself over the last few years. he was, when they were beaten by, Ireland were beaten by England in the warm-up game, World Cup warm-up game in Twickenham 4 years ago, the entire country blamed him. And wrongly. It was the forwards. The forwards was one of the worst displays by an Irish forward pack I've experienced in the professional era. I can't recall a worse one. They were absolutely annihilated, and everyone blamed the 10. Now, he didn't play well. Really? Like, if you're winning, if you're a 10 and you're playing well, you always think the 9 guys in front of you, the pack and your 9, are the reason you're doing well because they're giving you time and space. He had no time and space. Didn't hear him complain. He didn't point the finger. He got dropped. He got ridiculed. Everyone said, you're finished. I would go to Dublin and people would say things, how poor he was to me, and I would try and defend him, saying, look, the young guy will come back. And how he's reconstructed himself and how he's gone about grabbing his second opportunity is really admirable and I think inspirational to us all. Now, Ross, no one is going to be Johnny Sexton. No one, because Sexton's an all-time great, right? You're going to have in any sport, whatever they are, in any team sport, the person that's behind or replacing one of the all-time greats is never going to be as good. It's not possible. That doesn't make Ross Byrne a poor player. As I said, if Ross Byrne had an Australian grandmother, he would have 60 or 70 caps for the Wallabies right now. But Sexton, for so long, has been such a dominant player that Ross hasn't had the opportunities that are in the green jersey. Now, the thing that's changed about Ross Byrne is his attitude. When Ross Byrne came on the field there in the Six Nations, his eyes changed. And I was at the Virgin Media studio, and I'm pointing at it, saying that Shane Byrne and Shane Horgan, and Robbie Carney and Andrew Trimble, I'm saying, look at Ross, look at his eyes, look at him. And mate, he was angry, he was desperate. And Robbie Carney said he knows the next 20 minutes might determine his next 5 years. What a brilliant observation from Rob. And Byrne went out there and he was angry, he was demanding. Before the Italian game, he was speaking, he was the leader, even though he wasn't captain. And I think he knows this. He knows he's got a second shot at the title. And I think he's grabbing it with both hands. He's not going to be as good as Johnny Sexton. So let's not get there. Let's not even bother comparing him. He just has to be competent and get the team around the field, which I know he is. And here's the other part. I hope the guy does really well because he's been really unfairly treated by the sporting community in Ireland, spoken about very poorly. And as I said, he's conducted himself in a really fabulous manner. And I hope he goes out and shows what he can do. Again, let's drop our expectation. He is not going to put in a performance like Sexton because he's not Sexton and no one else is on the planet. You've got to go down to Barrett and Richie Mo'unga and perhaps Entomac over in France to start saying who are we comparing them with. But that does not mean that he is not a very, very highly competitive professional player. He is. He's going to face Pollard, the Springbok 10, who is nowhere near as good a ball carrier and passer as Ross Byrne. Ross Byrne is far superior. Pollard is a magnificent kicker of the ball. Magnificent kicker of the ball. So we have two very contrasting 10s on Saturday. But in my opinion, Byrne is better than him in one of those departments. So let's just see where the guy goes. I hope he can do it. I believe he will.
Big few weeks for him. One last question then. Josh van der Fleer is out, right? And Scott Penny was in the squad last week and has played very well and is kind of his natural successor at Leinster and many people think Ireland as well. But is there a world in which we have some experimentation and see somebody new playing at 7? Like we've seen Peter O'Mahony play for the Lions at 7, even though it wasn't really part of his makeup. Strange things happen, I guess, is what I'm asking. Is there a world in which maybe we see Caelan Doris or Conan shift over just for a bit of experimentation's sake? You know, in a World Cup, you might need something like this.
Yeah, the answer to that is yes. I'm pretty certain Leo is only looking at the next 80 minutes. Like, he's not thinking about a World Cup. This Leinster team, mate, I think to answer that question, we've got to come back. They're angry about what happened last year against La Rochelle. They're hurt. I have very, very rarely seen players as deeply affected by a defeat as Leinster were on that day. And Leo, who I know well, I coached him for 4 years. They were dragged down into dark places that I know where they had to go, but I don't want to ever go there again as a person. Like it rips you apart. They were ripped apart. The only way to get over that is to win. They'll never get that back. That's over. That's history. The only thing you can do to heal yourself is to win. And these guys are on a mission to do that. And you look at the draw, you look at the quality of the teams about, it's going to be really hard to do. There's a high-quality series of quarterfinals coming up here and obviously going to be high quality going forward. So Leo is only focused on beating Leicester. Full stop, end of story. Don't go past that. What he will do, he could pick Jack Hannon then. That's something I thought. What Leo is probably the best coach I've ever seen at club level in my lifetime is selections and getting his selections right. So whether he picks Penny or who I have to say has been absolutely superb over a fair swathe of this season, but hasn't got the opportunity because of the quality of the Leinster back row, is he will know who's the best person for that. He will know who's going to do the job for him that he needs to do. But what a really good dilemma, having a Lion in Conan and someone who played so superbly for Ireland when he was called upon in the last in that last game there, that beautiful, beautiful pass he delivered for the Grand Slam winning try. Having that dilemma, do I play him or do I play Penny, who's a highly experienced guy and playing in great form? Either way, whoever's on the bench is going to have a period of time on the field.
First world problems, the kids say these days, Matt. Great to have you with us.
Yeah, that's it, mate.
Thanks a million. Cheers. Enjoy the game. It's Matt Williams there giving us a preview of the Leinster game. It's 9:36 this morning. Brendan Rodgers is Pochettino with an Antrim accent, says ML89. Good manager, just missing something. Pochettino, did take Spurs to a Champions League final, which nobody's done before or since. So Leinster should be in all finals every year. They have a bigger wage budget than the English and French clubs, I think is what you mean. And the main players have their minutes managed. They have been slight failures because of this, says Peter M. I've seen people make the case about the salary caps and the Leinster wage bill, but it's not the same because the Leinster don't have first call on their players the whole time.
It's all. There's also been shots fired. Like Dan McFarlane was kind of saying that I can't control the demographics and all this, and Wigglesworth kind of leaned into that a little bit this week as well. I know Lancaster was kind of asked yesterday, is it disrespectful to Leinster and the work they're doing behind the scenes? Maybe a little bit. From a Leinster perspective, you just hope that hate that Matt says that they might be holding on to from the La Rochelle result last year, you'd hope that that's just not overarching in their brains, that they can get through these next couple of massive games and focus on La Rochelle when they have to. Don't think too far ahead.
Danny Mack says, me down to big team, someone tell Tommy. Trevor Giles is getting younger looking, says Griff. Ray Orr says, I just turned 30 as well. Tommy, congratulations, the hangovers don't get any easier. Can confirm it's true. Dara O'Toole says, happy birthday Tommy, easily some of the best non-answer answers on the crappy quiz. And Cavan Lad 100 says, Cavan could be 12th. No, I mean they could be, but they might not yet end up. I mean, if they obviously reach an Ulster final, then they have to be catapulted into somewhere higher than that anyway. Dennis Ryan says, Dublin first. Ger, stop talking, someone take Ger's temperature. Brian King, what is Ger smoking? Tipping team from the second tier. Yes, a random team from the second tier, because they're all created equal. Limerick, who were bottom of the second tier, and Dublin, who finished top, they're the same.
Yeah, I think the second tier thing is irrelevant. Like Dublin just got relegated last year on a whim. That doesn't happen too often, and they're a Division 1 team, let's be honest.
On tomorrow's show, Chelsea-Liverpool reaction, Ireland women's national team versus USA preview, virtual insanity and Masters chat with John Duggan, Vinnie Perth's League of Ireland preview, and plenty more. Right now, Pat Nevin with Joe from last night. Have a tremendous Tuesday.
You're very welcome back. Pat Nevin is with us. We're reviewing the Premier League weekend that was. We've dealt with the managerial sackings. Let's go to where the weekend started. Manchester City 4, Liverpool 1. There are times we bemoan Pep's tinkering, and there are other times where it's just bloody interesting to watch, and it seems to work very well too. So if people miss the game, you can expand on all this, but in the main, it was, for a lot of the game, Ake and Ruben Dias and Akanji as a back three. John Stones was in midfield, although he would venture into the defensive line as well, but he spent plenty of time in midfield next to Rodri, and it was sort of like a square with Stones, Rodri, De Bruyne, Gundogan. It was Mahrez on the right hand side. It was Jack Grealish, who says, I really feel myself again, and he was quite brilliant, it must be said, on the left hand side. And it was Alvarez through the middle, given the absence of Haaland. And Liverpool couldn't cope with this. Whatever way this all, swirl it together in a pot worked for Man City, it was really lovely to watch. They were as fluid maybe as they've been in some time.
Yeah, I was trying to think, was it a 3-2-4-1 or was it three in a box and two wide and one up front? And Stones, where the hell are you playing? Sorry, where? But he does that now and again. He gets a player. There's been a couple of ones that have done it, different ones. Zinchenko did it for a while, didn't he?
Yeah.
And Cancelo did it for a while. You think, I don't really know where you're playing, and it's easy to say that, right? But then because this is old stuff, this is Cruyff stuff, this is total football, right? You go and adapt and you push into areas where you think the space will be developed, right? But how do you know that beforehand? How do you know where that's going to develop? And does Pep kind of know that against? Has he watched the team and said, right, this is where the weakness is? Is it something a wee bit simpler? Is it they're all pretty good footballers and they're learning how to play brilliantly with each other and always want the ball and can be completely adaptable? And it might be a back three one week and it might be a 4-1 week and it might be slightly adapted. But the fact that he's brought newer ideas with not half positions but double positions, that it's now almost accepted that your left back actually might spend half the time in midfield now. That's whereas it wouldn't have been considered 2 or 3 years ago in the English game. And it's Pep that's been doing that. And I'm watching others trying it, having a go at it. Funnily enough, who was the team that did it? Sheffield United tried it. Remember, they tried it when the centre backs kept on going in midfield and overlapping all the time. That's a big jump in it from Sheffield United to Man City. But you can see what the thinking is. And a lot of the coaches talk about it because, there's coaching theory going on. They're all learning it. They're all looking at it all the time. But A, brave enough to do it in a major game. And B, not just doing it for the sake of it, doing it because it will work in a certain situation. And it was even going a goal down, it very quickly became very obvious that, wait a minute, they're utterly dominant. And completely. The first two goals, I think, were the classic Manchester City goals. Just get to the byline. That's what you do. Manipulate the situation, get roughly to the byline or beyond the fullbacks and the opposite side and cross it. It's the hardest ball. Everybody knows that's not new stuff. That's the hardest ball. But they manipulate that situation more often and better than anyone else. And it's usually because they get these overloads. So people get dragged all over the place. And because of it, clever enough players like De Bruyne or whatever to play that final pass into that area where you finally get the cut back, they're incredibly hard to stop. But they also is getting the best out of every single player, getting the best out of Stones now. Who'd have thought?
Yeah.
Who'd have thought you were going to get that? The Grealish one is no surprise whatsoever. Absolutely none. It's taken a long time to do it. And Pep's just sitting there going, yeah, I did this with Raheem Sterling. I did this with others. I'll develop it. I'll tell them what they need to do. And when they finally click and stop doing what they think they should be doing and take the base for what he's telling them and then allow themselves to grow out from it, it's brilliant to see it. I'm not surprised at it. I'd have been surprised if it didn't work, actually.
Yeah.
Knowing the quality that Grealish has got and knowing that Pep can get inside people's heads.
It is a wonderfully interesting time to watch football. It's a privilege to sit down. I found myself thinking on Saturday and watch this football genius have the courage and have the job security to experiment in this way. And as you said, I would love to know, and it's the one thing we never know because they're not going to give detailed explanations of their plans pre-game for obvious reasons. But you would love to know if that game transpired the way Pep envisaged, that he spotted several things in Liverpool and he said, I've just got the thing in my back pocket, boom, 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 this is how it's going to work. And as you said, I mean, we can all review it, we can all understand it a little bit in real time and post-game, but to conjure it up and think of it and know it's the right thing to do, I mean, he is, in my lifetime, I can't speak of Cruyff, but nobody, absolutely nobody has had the impact on the game that Guardiola has had.
Yeah, well, he'll say himself, Cruyff's ideas, around about that early 70s thing was the base of all this. And then what you do is, I think, was it Xavi or Iniesta said, Cruyff built the cathedral, we just paint it, right? And it's that's the concept of it. Like, that's the ideas, now do things with it. And that's and Pep gone and taken all that sort of stuff further as well. So that's, and he has taken it a lot further.
Yeah, Pep has surely built a fairly hefty extension to that cathedral, no?
A couple of domes in the end, I think.
I would think so. I would really think so.
No, absolutely, I would agree with that. It's to take nothing away from him, but you know where the root is, and then the tree can flourish, right? So that's fine. That's all good. There. The only way of finding out and answering the question you're asking just now is, you don't find it out with the players just now because they shouldn't be telling you. If they're telling you, they're wrong to tell you. But people that have worked with them before, see, the giveaway phrase is always the same. It's so often said about these types of managers, and there's damn few of them. He told me what was going to happen, and it happened.
Yeah.
In the game. And if that sort of manager, and the players are kind of gobsmacked, I didn't know the space was going to be there, but he told me that's where it would be and go there. And it happens. And the players just think they're spooky, you know? And the amount of people that have said that have worked with Pep in the past, it's extraordinary how many have felt that about him, that he kind of knows the oppositions, where their strengths and weaknesses will be. And also, you know, the element of surprise, because what you do is when you set up against Manchester City, just now you set up with a certain thing in mind. And then they go and do something completely different. And by the way, half an hour's gone and you've maybe just about figured out what they're doing. And by the way, the game's lost at that point. Yeah. And not only lost by goals, but lost by people looking around saying, well, we can't get a kick here, we can't move, we don't know who are marking. So keeping people guessing but there's no simple thing to do it. He's kind of slightly wizard-like when he does it that way. But like everyone else, he does make mistakes. But there's far fewer of them. And of course, everyone thinking before the game, well, Haaland's not playing. You know, it's going to be difficult. And it was just kind of ridiculous. So it looks brilliant. And I was at the other game. I was watching that in the bowels of the stadium at Arsenal when that was going on. And it was very funny. I'll rephrase it. It was very upsetting when, you know, when Liverpool scored at the start and the place erupts and people are all excited. By the time the second goal, and the press room with anybody who was Arsenal-minded was empty. They just walked out because they knew that's not coming back.
Yeah.
And they totally understood what was happening to put a massive amount of pressure on Arsenal. But fortunately for Arsenal, they kind of lived with it. But, you know, there is certainly a bit of the Peps and Arteta as well. So it's a brilliant battle between the two.
Yeah, no, it's super interesting. I'll come to Arsenal now. I guess the other obvious point to make with City is when you ally the wizardry of Pep with the technical craft he has at his disposal, it's extra special. Gundogan fits the bill of unsung hero in so much as multi-Premier League winning German international footballer can. But I mean, you know, in a glimpse, his awareness, his touch, his pass to Grealish in the build-up for the first goal, how highly do you rate him?
Yeah, I've talked to you in the past many times about how much I love David Silva, certain players, and Xavi's and Iniestas. And of course, Gundogan, he doesn't look as smooth as them a lot of the time, but he does the same things a lot of the time. And he's also got a brilliant goal scoring record. Remember, couple of seasons ago, it was just unbelievable. He was the go-to man. And he has been extraordinary. I think, again, one of those players where I'd watched him before he came to City and thought, yeah, he's all right. He's okay. You know, he just didn't jump out at you in any particular way. He was good, and he'd do some good things, and quality player. But then he turns up, and you know, you can sit him on your bench, you know, for 3 weeks, and he'll come back in and be the best player in the team sometimes. And it's to have that to walk on. If you know De Bruyne is having a quieter day, and then he walks on, you just think it's everywhere. And I think he's a player he seems to me an intelligent player, a very intelligent player. And in many ways, he is the perfect one for Pep, because Pep will say, right, I need this. And you know that he's going to take it, and you know that he's going to understand it. And he's also got that final millisecond ball that all the best Manchester City players have got. If the pass is on and it's the right pass, he'll make it. And it's a funny one because he's got that, you know, and we know De Bruyne has got that, Mahrez has got that when he's in the kind of right mood for it. Watching Grealish, he's beginning to get that now, and he didn't necessarily have that before. And the amount of players that are growing into being able to do that, it's extraordinary. It just sounds the simplest thing in the world. But that was the thing that really annoyed me early on with Foden a couple of times, that what a player. but you're still sometimes making the wrong decision, and I don't know why you are. But they've just been cut out one by one by one by one. They were cut out, and Foden now, he's up there with the same, with Gundogan as well. So at the moment, what you got to say, the Arsenal are ahead of them is absolutely incredible.
Well, indeed. So City have their mojo back. Have they left it too late? Might be the question. You mentioned you're at Arsenal 4, Leeds 1. I remember after the Reece Nelson winner against Bournemouth, we talked about the drama and the sense of mood. Could it be our year? It's starting to feel like our year. But the caveat was they could do without having to go to the emotional and physical well too often, especially over the next couple of weeks. So since that Reece Nelson winner, they dispatched of Fulham 3-0. That game was over at half-time. They beat Crystal Palace 4-1. They went out of Europe, blessing in disguise, the ultimate cliche around that one, and now Leeds 4-1 at home. So that's just what the doctor ordered. What's your sense, given that you were there, of where they are as they keep pace, more than keep pace with City now?
Well, the last one I was at was the Brentford one, and that was tense. But the thing that jumped out at me was the fans. They were extraordinary, the way they got behind them. And I was expecting to see a really fluid performance from Arsenal against a Leeds team who expected to come out and be, quite gung-ho. It was nothing like that. Honestly, Leeds was I was so upset by them because, they kept their better players, that they needed. They kept them off the pitch for a large part of the game. They were defensive, but they broke the numbers sometimes, so we give them the due for that. But Arsenal were there for the first time in a while. That was the first 45 minutes was by a distance the weakest I've seen Arsenal this season.
Okay.
They were slow, they were sluggish, they weren't understanding or working with each other. They actually looked like a team that didn't really believe that much, which is a stunning thing to say for a team that just walked away with what looks like on the outside an easy win. Now, they were much better in the second half. Yes, the manager's got into them a bit, he's adapted a bit, and it always helps when you get a lead. And as soon as they got a decent lead, the second goal, it was a piece of cake, just a walk in the park for them really after that. But this sounds as if I'm having some sort of dig at Arsenal. Exactly the opposite. They've done the other thing, i.e. they've had that emotional stuff at the end of games. They've had to chase it. They've battled and got a wee bit of luck, but kept on going to the end. They've done that. They've done what you've said, which is had a couple of easy games and cruised it. And now they're doing the old not playing well but still winning quite easily. That every single pointer that you want to look at for a team that's actually capable of continuing to do that and win the league is actually there. And again, everyone's saying it. It's a cliche. They're not in Europe. Look at all the games that Manchester City have got in comparison. It's still looking to me like I need to eat quite a lot of humble pie because I thought Manchester City would catch them. But every week that goes by, you just think a little bit less. And just at the weekend, I was at the Scotland game against Spain, obviously last week, and Tierney was unbelievable. He was just absolutely extraordinary. I mean, one of the best players in the park, better than most of the Spanish players. However much they said Scotland are rubbish, which made me smile a wee bit. And he can't get a game. He can't get a game for Arsenal. He is in phenomenal form and he cannot get a sniff of a game for Arsenal. He came on for sub the last 5 minutes. That tells you one hell of a story. Saka, who's their go-to player at the moment for scoring goals, didn't start the game, didn't seem to make much of a difference. He came on after a while, little impact in the game, didn't make any difference. Like Manchester City, they seem to have a few players, not maybe as many City, but they've got players who can step up to the plate when they need to. It's struggling now to see where the real weakness is. Even, you've not got a centre forward for a long time. Having to put Trossard there doesn't seem to make any difference. So at the moment, it's looking very, very good for Arsenal. There was a wee bit of nervousness, by the way, I have to say, in the first half with some Arsenal fans. But I like watching football games. I also love watching crowds and listening to crowds because they're all got their different dynamics. And the Arsenal dynamics completely changed because it was so quiet there for so long. And all this season it's been building and building. It's great. The last few games have been great. And in this game, it went really quiet for a period and you thought, oh, don't do that. You need to get behind the team. You need to lift them. Honestly, I hadn't got a sentence out when I was doing the commentary. And there they were singing again, shouting and getting on. Now really lifting it again. as if they fully understood what was needed at that point in time. So, as again, talking cliches, but it is completely true. Cliches are there for a reason. Because they're genuinely true. And you need the fun sometimes.
It's an interesting couple of days coming up. So, if you take it as 26th of April against Manchester City as looming large in the Arsenal imagination, they have Anfield on Sunday 4:30, live game, the type of game Liverpool in their strange up and down predicament will get up for, as they did against Manchester United. Now Liverpool do play against Chelsea tomorrow. Best of luck to you if you got a strong feeling about a form line there for either, but that's where they are. So Arsenal have Anfield on Sunday, they have West Ham away with the week's rest in between. They have Southampton at home, and then they'll have City on the Wednesday 26th, and then they'll have Chelsea 3 days later. Presumably Chelsea might have sorted themselves out by then. So, it's not easy by any means. Have you any great sense of what Liverpool are going to pitch up this week? We sort of brush by them in the City talk.
I'm afraid Jurgen Klopp doesn't know.
Yeah.
No, you haven't got a clue, because you look at the quality they've got. They had the big opportunity. I mean, it was Manchester City. But their stats off the top of my head was 4 shots, 1 on target. This is Liverpool we're talking about here. This is a team which has been phenomenal for 3 or 4 years, maybe a bit more than that. And they just, when they don't have a good day, they have a stinker. And they look tired, they look disorganised sometimes. The link-ups and flows with Gakpo, 1 minute it can be brilliant, next minute it can be non-existent. You just don't know. You have no idea which one's going to turn up. They do seem to be able to lift themselves weirdly, because you ask somebody to guess that one, but 7-0, Man United? Seriously? You have no idea, no concept of it. The one thing about Liverpool is the Kop's quite good at lifting them, and that helps a wee bit. So, when they're at a home game, it certainly lifts them. And there's enough good players there that are capable on their day of beating anyone, but it's just, you'd say it's such an interesting season. And watching Manchester United yesterday, been excited for them for a while, and then watched them yesterday and went, what? Where'd that come from? Disinterest all the way through the team. Just Newcastle aren't that great. They're okay, and they're fighting and battling a bit. But I have to say, Liverpool, Man United, everybody out with, in fact, I'll put Brentford in there, Brighton in there as well. What you're kind of going to get from those 4-ish. See everyone else can do just about anything. And Liverpool are absolutely in that place.
Yeah. It's amazing, really. Let's finish on Newcastle 2, Manchester United 0, or 4-0 on the XG, Pat, because it was that kind of a game. Newcastle up to 3rd. They're level on points with Manchester United. They have far superior goal difference than Manchester United. They haven't finished above them in the league since 1977. So a touch of history at play. This was absolute dominance. I saw Jonathan Wilson in The Guardian at the stat. Manchester United 2.5 times more likely to lose a game when Casemiro does not play than when he does. 2.5 times more likely to lose. I saw Danny Murphy on Match of the Day last night make the point that some of this is very much on the Ten Hag setup. So he had Scott McTominay, fresh from his heroics for Scotland, of course. He was the furthest of Manchester United's middle three for most of the game. He was trying to step up on Bruno Guimaraes. And they had Bruno Fernandes and Marcel Sabitzer as the 2 sixes together. On Sean Longstaff was Bruno Fernandes, and Sabitzer was looking after Willock. Murphy was making the point. Bruno Fernandes and Sabitzer did not see danger, did not work in tandem. McTominay might be the more defensive minded. He's further up the pitch on Guimaraes. They did switch later on, McTominay and Bruno Fernandes, but nonetheless Murphy was making the point that setup was completely overrun, and a fair degree of blame there has to fall on Ten Hag. United are only 3 points better off than this time last year, for all the the headline news and the headline improvement.
Yeah. To be fair, it was a mess. And how much can you say in Ten Hag? He's not really. I don't know if it's even his real team yet. I honestly don't think it is. I think he needs to get a summer under his belt, getting the ones in that he wants to get in and the ones out that he wants to get out. The McTominay one, I understand the initial concept of it. For Scotland, I was at both the games, right? He scores 4 goals in a game and a quarter. Right? So you understand why you're going to stick him up there a wee bit, push him forward, see if you can get anything. But you do need someone, in that base area. Sabitzer was just nothing much happening there. He wasn't destroying anything. He wasn't killing it. He wasn't seeing it. Bruno, that's not his play anyway. No. That's not his game to go back there. He was in one of his slightly stroppier moods anyway. Oddly enough, if you're going to try and work hard in the midfield, you're kind of hoping your front three, as it were, and I know they played a 4-2-3-1, but your front three, your two wingers and your striker are going to do a job for you. I remember thinking after about 25 minutes, they should bring Weghorst on. They really ought to. Oh dear, he is on. He never got a sniff, but then he wasn't getting any good service. Anthony was having one of those days,
Pat, is Anthony not having one of those seasons? Like, what does this guy bring to the party, really?
I'm not a huge fan. So I haven't been a huge fan. He has got skill. He does the same trick the vast majority of the time. He does the same thing, and now and again, he's one of those players you will always remember the goals, because he cuts in and he slews them in at the top corner and they look brilliant. But see, one of them goals, they count the same as a tap-in.
Yeah.
Right. So
OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
Zebo going on his own. He gets the try.
The Red 78.
We're both Munster people.
Nobody knows Munster.